Hello and welcome to the Weekly Stuff Podcast with Jonathan Lack.
And Sean Chapman.
As always, we are here to talk about stuff rather consistently for the first time in a while, as we have 2 episodes this week, which is pretty cool.
It's just making up for like the 8 weeks or whatever we have not made podcasts for, but...
Well, you didn't need to mention that, but
yes, I do. That's my role on this podcast. I'm the snarky one.
It's very true, and honestly, this episode is going to be very self-aware of that, because this is a catch-up episode.
Exactly.
If you didn't hear, last week, episode 109, we did our E3 episode, as we always do this summer. E3, lots of gaming stuff, so we recapped all of that, went through that, always a fun episode to do. Now we are here to play a little bit of summer movie catch-up.
Yes.
Specifically, we're going to have big discussions in this episode of Avengers Age of Ultron, which I know you've all seen by now, and Mad Max Fury Road, which I can't be sure you've all seen by now, but if you haven't, you absolutely should before it goes out of theaters.
Yes. Like, that's no joke. Like, seriously, like Mad Max Fury Road, it might be the best movie I've seen in theaters since we started this podcast. You know, like all of our podcasts, really. Like, because that's saying I don't see a lot of movies in theaters. The only movies I really see are like kind of action movies and comic book movies. But this is one of the best like new action movies in years and years, like new in a lot of different ways. You know?
Well, I will say definitely in terms of mainstream big Hollywood tentpole releases, this is the best we've had on this podcast, definitely. Yeah. And I just straight up said in my review, I think it's one of the best in my lifetime. Because if you think of the landmarks, Matrix, Lord of the Rings, you know, some of those, I think those would be...
Like Dark Knight.
I would throw in there. I think those would be the landmarks. This absolutely belongs to that tradition, I think, of our lifetimes, what those movies are. Totally. So, big moment. Very much wanted to make sure we do a podcast on it. And on Avengers, because we're interested in these things. And boy, does Avengers give you things to talk about.
Yeah.
Good and bad. So we'll get into that. Beforehand, let's see. We always try to do some stuff at the beginning. I wanted to mention, as we did all gaming stuff last time. This is more movies and TV.
Yeah.
Before we took our little hiatus in May, we were talking about Twin Peaks and the Showtime revival, and David Lynch left, then he came back, and what's happening with that, no one knows. Hopefully it gets made.
David Lynch is like Schrodinger's cat. He's both on Twin Peaks and off Twin Peaks at like quantum mechanically at the exact same time.
Very much. But anyway, since then, last time we talked about it, it's been so long, last time we talked about it, I had not seen Twin Peaks. I hadn't even seen a whole lot of David Lynch. I've gone on this giant David Lynch kick. He's become one of my favorite directors ever. Yeah. I love his movies so much. I just love it when you find a director where you are so 100% on their wavelength. You're just kind of smiling and giggling through their work. And that's me with David Lynch. I find his movies incredibly funny, but also just so profoundly human, so well made, so creative. He's awesome. He's the best. And so I had to do Twin Peaks. And so I got the Blu-ray set because it was on sale. And that set, if you don't have it, is fantastic. It's one of the best TV sets I've ever seen. They did a great job with it. And I've been watching through the show. I've gotten through all the stuff with Laura Palmer, so I'm in kind of the...
You're in the...
I'm in the dark period of Twin Peaks.
Dregs of season 2.
Yeah, although I hear it gets very good at the very end, so I'm excited for that. But finally watching that series, and I just had to mention it on here at some point because I'm so excited and I want to talk about it someday. So hopefully, have you watched all of Twin Peaks?
I've never made it all the way through season 2.
Okay.
I've got kind of, I think, where you are probably, and just kind of stopped.
Like you found who the killer was and that stuff? Okay. Because I think the show...
I want to go back. I'm probably just going to rewatch it because I liked it so much that I'll be fine rewatching it. And then I also want to watch the Fire Walk with Me movie at some point.
Yeah, me too. So I'm going to finish it, and if you want to finish it someday, we should do a podcast on that. Yeah. It would be a ton of fun.
It's so fucking good. Kyle MacLachlan is so fucking awesome.
Oh, Dale Cooper is one of the best TV characters ever.
Like, it's crazy to me that Twin Peaks was made like at the dawn of the 90s, like 91, right?
Yeah.
Started. Like, that, like, fucking TV shows, just, like...
It's still ahead of its time.
Yeah, it just feels like it's a movie. Like, it almost feels like what, like kind of HBO does in some ways of just making, movie episodes for this TV show.
I think it's incredibly influential, beyond just the normal ways we say it's influential. Like, clearly it influenced the X-Files, that's obvious.
Yes, yeah.
And paved the way for the X-Files to exist. That kind of thing.
Which then went on to, like, influence, like, Buffy and all these shows after it.
But I would say Twin Peaks, more than anything, influenced this idea that TV can be cinematic, because it is a David Lynch movie on television. And I do think the 5 David Lynch directed episodes are the best episodes of the series, easily. That's not to say the other directors dropped the ball in any way. Some of the other directors, and there were some big hitters who became huge cable directors afterwards, like Leslie Linklater and Tim Hunter. A lot of big hitters worked on Twin Peaks, and they do great work. But no one sees the world like David Lynch does.
Yeah,
even when
that's kind of understanding it.
Yeah, even when he's overseeing things, it's when his hands-on are there. And I think there's this myth that Twin Peaks went off the rails in season 2. I don't think that's quite true. Season 1 is great, and I think season 2 is great up through the apprehension of the killer. Yes. And then it just kind of falls apart because it just would. But, I mean, up to that point, the actual episode where you find out who killed Laura Palmer is one of the best things I've ever seen just cinematically. Yeah. TV, cinema, whatever. It is an incredible sequence that I can't believe made it to air because of how dark and violent it is.
Right.
And how upsetting it is. But it is so David Lynch. And the humor is so David Lynch. And Dale Cooper is a character who would not exist anywhere else because that is a character straight out of his mind.
Yeah.
And God bless Kyle MacLachlan for going along with it.
It's just such... crazy character. He's so off the wall in so many ways.
And yet
he seems so normal.
And he's so human. He actually goes through things that I think are very relatable in a weird way.
Yeah.
And the one, I think, redeeming side of the latter half of season 2 is they keep doing good stuff with him.
Sure.
And so the show's center remains strong. Did you get to the episodes with David Duchovny?
No, I didn't even know he was in that show.
He plays a transvestite. It's great. Sure. He's from the DEA and is one of Cooper's old friends. And
I mean, that's if you didn't know, that's the backstory for Mulder. I think that's where the Mulder character actually comes from. But it's really a transvestite.
It's great because he's cross-dressing. He's got the stuffed chest and all that, but he still just talks like David Duchovny. He doesn't change his voice.
That's really good.
And the best part, though, is that everyone else in Twin Peaks is a little weirded out by this guy because it's Midland America in 1990. Yeah. But Dale Cooper just thinks it's awesome and wants to know, man, how did you get to this happy place in your life? You're so much happier now. And Denise is so happy to tell him. And it's that part. I mean, Twin Peaks basically becomes a soap opera after Laura Palmer dies. And some of it is fantastic soap opera and some of it is awful. But I kind of love it in both ways because that's just what it is. But no, man, I got through the pilot of Twin Peaks and I'm like, where have you been all my life?
Right.
You beautiful, beautiful show.
I told you.
Yep.
Twin Peaks is great.
And I gotta say, if you like David Lynch, if you like Twin Peaks, the heir to that show does exist now, just none of y'all are watching it, and that's Hannibal on NBC, which is definitely the heir in a couple of ways. The biggest one being it somehow is airing on an American broadcast network, despite content and everything else-wise being a complete mismatch for that, and you have no idea how it got on the air.
Since I don't really watch TV shows until they're done airing, I haven't watched any of Hannibal personally, but my parents watch it.
Yeah.
And so every once in a while when I come home and I'm just walking through where the main TV is, I look over, it's what the fuck are you guys watching? What is going on? It's there's just a pile of human body parts on the screen.
Here's what
is going on?
I said this on Twitter the other night because someone was, I sing the praises of Hannibal on Twitter. I think it's the best thing on TV right now, especially now that Mad Men is done. It's the best show on TV. It is by far the most formally experimental thing in all of mainstream media right now. It is just, it's avant-garde at times. There are episodes that go by that have no plot and they're just sometimes non-representational and it's just crazy and it's all it's dream states that are really the reality, like Twin Peaks often is.
Yeah.
But I would say, and someone was kind of asking me about that, because I compared it to Twin Peaks and I said, but it goes further. And they're like, well, what do you mean by that? I'm like, well, here's how I would phrase it. Hannibal is like Twin Peaks if every episode of Twin Peaks was done by David Lynch and he was in a dark mood every day. Because, you have the light David Lynch and the dark, and sometimes they work together. No, Hannibal is like that level of extremity every week, and it gets more extreme as it goes by. Because Hannibal kind of starts where you're in they're doing a riff on procedurals. It's not a procedural, but they're kind of doing that riff. And then season 2 gets weirder and weirder and weirder. And now we're in season 3, and clearly no one at NBC is even screening the episodes because they're just utterly bizarre. Season 2 ends with this cliffhanger where literally every character who isn't Hannibal is lying in a pool of their own blood. And we're through 2 episodes of season 3 and we still don't know who lived and died. That's the kind of show Hannibal is.
Nice.
We're still not sure what we've seen in season 3 is real or a dream. The plot has progressed in all of 2 sentences overall, but it's beautiful and etheric and it's great. And that really, to me, feels like that's the legacy of Baby Twin Peaks is 25 years later, Brian Fuller was like, I can do you one better, David Lynch.
What if the end of Hannibal is just Kyle MacLachlan as Dale Cooper wakes up? It's like, Well, that was really weird.
Oh, that would be great. And the thing is, if they ever wanted to, Kyle MacLachlan playing that character would fit in on Hannibal in some weird way, and it would be great.
Like, maybe that's how the Twin Peaks new thing starts.
Yeah.
It's like,
well,
like Dale Cooper wakes up and a Hannibal dream.
And I'm taking the long way to say this, but all around, like, going back to our discussion that initiated all of this is what is going to happen to this Twin Peaks revival. I don't know if it's humanly possible for anyone to direct as much TV all on their own as David Lynch is suggesting he's going to for this, because that just doesn't happen. And this guy hasn't made anything in 10 years now. Film-wise, he's gone back to painting and stuff. People think that when a filmmaker stops making films, they stop working. That's not true.
No, I mean, they stop existing. Like, again, it's a quantum mechanical thing. When we're talking about David Lynch. It's just like, on the quantum level, he ceases to exist when he's not working on a project.
But I do think I would like to see a Twin Peaks where he does everything and just see what that would be like, because that would be fascinating to me, and see the undiluted Twin Peaks. Because I think it's possible Twin Peaks is only as good as it is because it's a little diluted. I don't know if
that's a fair point.
I don't know if David Lynch works for 10 straight hours, but we'll see.
Yeah.
And I would like that. But
I'm really excited about the new Twin Peaks.
But man, this whole rabbit hole even led me to watch Eraserhead, which is like the most disturbing thing I've ever seen. Boy, does Eraserhead influence Hannibal. If you like the sound design of Eraserhead and thought that wasn't scary enough, go ahead and watch Hannibal. That takes it up to 11. Anyway, but yeah, that's just... Someday we should do a Twin Peaks podcast and just let it be very weird. And what we'll do is we'll record the whole podcast backwards and then reverse it.
Yeah.
Yeah. God, that's a great scene. Mm-hmm. So many great scenes. Anyway, just Twin Peaks makes me happy to know that show exists, that Dale Cooper exists.
So good.
It's all good. All right. Good. But let's go ahead and talk about some movies. I'm going to go ahead and kick things off with the movies I've seen that you haven't, just so we can get through those quick.
That makes no sense.
Yeah, so let's see. And these are just kind of the hits. I have not seen a ton this summer so far. Like, I skipped Tomorrowland when no one gave it a good review.
Yeah,
and things
that's disappointing. That
it's Brad Bird too, and it looked so cool. But I just didn't have time for it because that came out in the thick of. It's like that was a weekend. I think I was grading papers too. It's like it had to be really special for me to go see it.
Right.
But I did go see the Melissa McCarthy comedy Spy, which was directed by Paul Feig, who did Bridesmaids and stuff. And everyone really liked it. It had great reviews, and I thought it was okay. I think I'm possibly just more attuned to this because I like spy movies. I like James Bond. I like all the spy spin-off movies. I like when I was a kid, I liked those spy young adult novels you would read and all the riffs on that. And I didn't think this movie Spy was original or distinctive enough in how it riffed on all of that to be that memorable to me. But Melissa McCarthy is funny. Rose Byrne is riotously funny. In fact, she is. I was thinking about this afterwards. Rose Byrne is the funniest part of every movie I've ever seen her in. And she should be in more comedies because she's always the best part.
I don't think of her as a comedy actor, you know?
Yeah. What do you know her from?
28 Weeks Later, actually. It's just like because I watched that relatively recently and it just popped to mind.
No, because
she's in stuff.
Yeah, she's in Get Him to the Greek. She's in Neighbors. She's in a lot of those Apatow comedies. And she's fucking hilarious.
I haven't watched any of those.
Right. No, it's okay. And so, but anyway, and Spy is good. It's just, I feel like a lot of the people who saw this and loved it maybe didn't see Kingsman, which was earlier this year with Matthew Vaughn, which I thought was a much smarter and better overall riff on this genre and stuff. And like Spy even does the thing where it keeps having to do like the James Bond stylistic flourishes, like in the music and the opening titles, but it has nothing in narrative common with James Bond overall. Like I feel like it doesn't quite get what makes a James Bond movie, and it thinks it's riffing on that, and it's actually riffing on a totally different kind of spy movie, which is fine. But anyway, it was funny, it was fine, but it was mostly forgettable. Like, I was trying to list, like, what movies did I see this summer? And it's like, I had 3 here. I was like, I know I saw Spy, that's it, right. And then I don't even really remember the plot, but Melissa McCarthy, like, this was the best part. She has been kind of pigeonholed since Bridesmaid, playing the, I don't want to say this derogatorily, this is Hollywood's fault, the loud, angry fat woman.
Right, yes.
And she is so much more talented than that, and she has so much more range, and the best thing about Spy is that it gives her range again, and she gets to play a character who is not just one thing, and that's really nice. Because she's a big movie star now. Spy had made a bunch of money and proved that more than ever, and I just like that it did it with a movie that's like, okay, she's playing a real character here. And they're doing that Ghostbusters reboot with her and Paul Feig, and I hope it's the same kind of thing there. All right. Then in terms of a much bigger movie, because it's the biggest one of the moment, Jurassic World.
Oh, yes. JW.
And I don't always like to talk about box office stuff, but in this case, the box office stuff for Jurassic World is so much more fascinating than the movie itself.
Yes.
Because this movie opened and everyone thought it's going to do well. It's a Jurassic Park movie. But no one thought it was going to break records. Not even Universal, where they were predicting a $100 billion opening weekend. And it opens at $209 million, breaking the Avengers opening weekend record.
Yeah.
And breaking the international opening weekend record at over $500 million, which no one has ever even approached before. How did that happen? Is Jurassic Park really that popular? Like, does it carry that much cachet?
I think the dinosaur segment of the market has been very underserved recently, and so you just had a lot of raptors, a lot of T-Rexes coming up to the theater showing up. It's like, we feel like there needs to be more diversity and representation for reptilian actors, and they finally got what they wanted.
You're joking, but it's baffling, isn't it?
Yeah, I have no fucking answer.
Yeah.
I think I said this last podcast, I don't get why the people love Jurassic Park as much as they do. Like, the first movie is fine. It was influential. Like, the CG effects are still very impressive for what they are for that movie. The Jurassic Park's not that amazing. It's nowhere near as good as something like Jaws,
No.
And it's like, none of the other Jurassic Park movies are even, like, good. Like, I think... 2 is the one that's okay. 2's the one with Jeff Goldblum still in it, right?
Yeah.
I think that one's okay.
2 is directed by Steven Spielberg, so it's got a certain level of quality to it. 2
is okay. 3 is complete garbage. And it's like, why? Like, how and why? I don't understand.
Let me give my theory.
Okay, yes, please do. Because you've actually seen it.
I've actually seen it, but that's the thing. It's not going to play into it, because when I actually give my review, it's horrible. But, okay. I do like Jurassic Park. I agree. I don't think it's as good as people make it out to be. I think it's a very good, very solid summer movie. I think it's in many ways a good prototype of what a nice, fun, solid popcorn flick is.
Sure.
I think it's very well made. It has some of Steven Spielberg's best pure sequences. The T-Rex attack is just one of the best things he's ever done. And it's got some memorable characters. The Jeff Goldblum character is great. The guy who says "clever girl," that's just a great moment.
Yeah.
So I think Jurassic Park is a fun movie. I like revisiting it every 5 years maybe.
Sure.
I don't see it a ton, but I think it's a good movie. But now that I think about it, I was thinking about this when Jurassic World opened this big, and I was like, I'm racking my brain, how does this happen? And this was before I'd seen the movie. And I did remember, though, when Jurassic Park 3 came out, and I was 9, I think, when that came out, I was excited for it, because I loved dinosaurs at the time, I was into Jurassic Park at the time, as a lot of kids are.
Sure.
And I even, I didn't think The Lost World was good.
Because it's like you just hadn't seen enough Godzilla movies and you just didn't realize there's something way better out there waiting for you than actual dinosaurs. It's fake, way cooler dinosaurs.
You're absolutely right on this. But anyway, and I was big into Jurassic Park 3 when it came out just because it's the new dinosaur movie and it's another Jurassic Park and it's kind of fun, and I was 9 and didn't really care as much about quality. And I don't think Jurassic Park 3 is completely irredeemable. It's just mostly irredeemable. Yeah. But, so I was kind of thinking about that. Like, as a kid, I could relate back then that I had watched the first 2 movies on VHS, and I kind of had a pent-up demand for it, and I was excited. But here's the thing. Jurassic Park 2 and 3 they are all equidistant to each other. 1 is 1993, 2 is 1997, 3 is 2001. There had been equal gaps between them, and I think there was just waning enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Then you get to 2015, though, and it's been 14 years, and you've had 14 years for kids to be watching those 3 movies, primarily the first one, and catching up on them. And you've got potentially multiple generations of new fans of those coming out. And there's a new dinosaur fan born every day, because dinosaurs are just something every kid goes through that phase. Everyone's going to like dinosaurs.
I skipped the dinosaur phase and went straight to Godzilla, and I was looking at everyone and it's like, yeah, T-Rex is okay, but it's like, look how small it is. Like, Godzilla can shoot fire from his mouth.
Again, I agree, but you're not like most kids, right?
Yeah, I was way cooler.
Right, okay. Anyway.
Fire from his mouth.
But you've got that 14 years of pent-up of those new kids coming in.
Yeah.
You've got all the people who were kids when Jurassic Park came out who are nostalgia addicts for it. I just think this is a movie that potentially, a new Jurassic Park movie, crosses crosses every possible quadrant of kids, adults, parents of the parents of kids who were there when Jurassic Park came out and are now older, who might want to see it with their grandchildren now or something. I just think it's potentially the perfect kind of nostalgia bubble, and it just kind of blew up because they marketed it well. It has Chris Pratt, who became this huge star after Guardians of the Galaxy. And it came after kind of a fallow period. Like, Avengers was big, and there were a couple, Mad Max did well, Spy did well, but none of these were breaking the bank in the way that Jurassic World then was set up to do.
Yeah.
So I just think it was kind of a lot of circumstances coming together. And it makes me wonder how big Star Wars is going to be at the end of this year.
Right.
Because if that's happening to Jurassic Park, good God, is that going to happen to Star Wars?
What if Star Wars just flops? Like, what if, like, nobody sees it? Like, what if, like, the unthinkable happens? It's like, yeah, everyone got their fill of Jurassic World.
Everyone at Disney commits harakiri because they've put everything they have into it.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah.
And EA just puts up a little thing that says, 1 year until it's Battlefront. Play it.
Yeah. Anyway, but here's the thing. All of that does make sense, I think, on a business level. But the movie itself doesn't. The movie itself was not the reason people went to see it.
Yeah, I mean, like movies make money because of like the business and the marketing. They don't make money because they're good.
But sometimes they do. Like that's
sure,
the thing.
Like it helps, but it's not going to guarantee anything.
It doesn't guarantee anything, but I don't know. I do think part of the reason Avengers held as well as it did from day 1 to 2 to 3 is it's like, oh god, this is actually a really good movie.
Sure, yeah.
And why Titanic lasted as long as it did and made $1 billion back in '97 is Titanic's a good movie, and it made the money for that.
Okay, sure. I would say it's kind of a boring movie.
Okay, I like Titanic. I see why Titanic is liked by the people who went to see it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. I can never quite explain Avatar because Avatar's good but not on that same level. So anyway, but Jurassic World, man, I was excited to see Jurassic World because it's a new director and it's got Chris Pratt and some other actors I like, and maybe someone who really grew up with this could breathe new blood into it and make a fun Jurassic Park movie because the first one is a good movie, solid B+. The sequels are not that good. Maybe we could finally get a good Jurassic Park movie. But no, Jurassic World is... Here's the closest thing I can say about it, and this is going to sound really damning, probably more than I even mean it to be. It's like Superman Returns. In that, you know how Superman Returns was basically just the plot of Superman 1?
Yes.
But with new actors and...
but somehow connected to the first movie in some, vague way.
That's Jurassic World. Okay. 100%, because it's basically the same plot. They've opened... The only difference is that it's not a, prototype for a theme park. They've opened the full theme park. But they open the full theme park... They do something stupid with science. They do everything possible they can stupidly to let the dinosaur out. It eats everyone. They fight at the end.
And that's basically seems that's. I watched the trailer. That all checks out for me as the plot of the movie.
There's no surprises. There's nothing new. It's very much a Jurassic Park redux.
And I have to say, and this is one of the reasons why I didn't want to go see it, and I will probably never actually see this movie, is because no matter what the movie is, my opinion on the movie will always be tainted, because every time I watched the most recent trailers for it, I kept on waiting for it to be a trailer for a Godzilla movie, because the entire setup for it seems like it's the first 30 minutes of a Godzilla movie where they make the monster that then Godzilla needs to come out and fight. That's just what Jurassic World is in my head. And so it's even if the movie was really good, I would probably despise it, because it's what the fuck? I just watched 2 hours. Where's the part where Godzilla comes out and fights the cool T-Rex thing?
Yeah. It's very formulaic, and then I think on top of that, it's just so dry. Jurassic Park does not have the best characters in the world, but they're decent. They're the right kind of characters for that movie. Sam Neill is the right kind of protagonist for that. He's interesting enough. Jeff Goldblum has a lot of color to things.
Yes.
You have a lot of that. In this movie, Chris Pratt does not have a character. It's as simple as that. I can't tell you a thing about him. It's a bad performance from Chris Pratt, and it's not his fault. He has literally nothing to play.
That just reminds me of... I saw some interview, because I subscribed to the Conan channel on YouTube, because I like some of his skits and stuff, and I just saw... It was an interview with Chris Pratt, and I was kind of bored. It was 4 minutes. I was I'll just click on this. Chris Pratt had a funny bit where he said, there are only 3 expressions I have in Jurassic World. You don't want to go over the top. You just want to let the music do the acting for you. And then they did a bit where he made the same face 3 times. So it's I thought that was just a funny joke. Apparently, he was actually being completely serious by what you just said.
I mean, Chris Pratt, the thing is, he's a great actor.
He was so good in Guardians.
He can breathe life into just about anything. I mean, this guy got his start on... Boy, what was it? It's not One Tree Hill. It's some other WB show. I don't know. Some WB show, right?
Sure, yeah.
And
that's all you need to say.
Yeah, you get it, right?
Yeah.
It's not One Tree Hill, but it's like One Tree Hill. And dude, he got his start on that and is now the biggest movie star in the world. His work on Parks and Rec is beyond reproach. In Guardians of the Galaxy, he's a great leading man who is both funny and charming and all that, but also commands the screen and has charisma.
Charismatic, yeah.
None of that in this. He's just a hunk of meat in this movie. Anyone could have played that. And it's an aggressively boring character. They don't let him be funny. They don't let him be particularly cool. He's there to move things along. Bryce Dallas Howard gives the best performance in the movie.
I didn't even know she was in it.
Yeah, and she's a good actress who I like and isn't in things enough. However, her character is so problematic because it's this woman who runs the park, and the whole movie is shaming her for wanting to be independent and career-oriented and non-maternal, as if that's the worst thing a woman could possibly be, is not wanting kids. And that's, I swear to God, this movie came out in the year 2015. Her arc is she has to take care of her nephews, she doesn't like kids, by the end she realizes kids are what she always needed. That is a movie that came out in the year 2015.
I don't know, there's something weird with that being in Jurassic Park also, just because, like, you know, the whole thing with Jurassic Park 1 was that they only made female dinosaurs so they couldn't reproduce, but life found a way. Like, there's just something, I don't know, there's some weird, deeper commentary, something going on there that someone needs to dig out that I don't have the patience to do.
No, because, good God, is the movie sexist. And all the stuff like, you know, so she's in high heels for her job.
This is what I've heard about.
For her job that would in no way require high heels because her job involves walking around a park and talking to people. Like, I get that she'd be wearing a nice kind of pantsuit thing.
Yeah.
But if she has to walk around an island all day, why would she be wearing high heels? And then she has to run around in the jungle with them on, even though at that point a woman would take them off because, obviously...
and use them to stab a raptor in the eye.
Yeah, and then of course she has to take off her blouse at one point, and so for this whole second half of the movie, she's wearing barely nothing, and it's just and the whole thing also is like they try to do the thing where Chris Pratt is the Harrison Ford type who, you know, he knows she loves him before she knows, but it doesn't even make sense because they have no chemistry together and he has no character, and she's doing her best with that role, but boy is it thankless. So that's boring. I think Colin Trevorrow, who's the director, he made a movie I very much liked a couple years ago called Safety Not Guaranteed. But this is the reason why it's really, really sexist when Hollywood won't let Michelle MacLaren, who is this great TV director who's been working for like 2 decades, has made some of the best and biggest episodes of TV ever. They won't let her direct Wonder Woman because they don't think she's experienced enough.
Exactly.
But they will let this dude Colin Trevorrow direct a Jurassic Park movie when he does not have anything near the skill needed to do that. This movie, the action is awful. The staging of things, you barely ever see the dinosaurs full frame. It's got way more to do with Michael Bay than it does Steven Spielberg. I don't think the special effects are particularly good. The CGI is like well rendered, but it never looks convincing next to the actors. The stuff in Jurassic Park 1, which is a mix of animatronics and CGI, looks way better to me, even today. I mean,
those effects still hold up pretty well. Like, that's the most impressive thing about Jurassic Park to me.
Well, it's because Steven Spielberg knows how to shoot that stuff.
Exactly.
I don't think this guy does. There's one good sequence at the very end where a raptor and a T-Rex team up against the bad dinosaur, and it's awesome because it does not involve the humans, but that's basically it. And it's preposterous and silly, and it's at least kind of lively. The rest of the movie is just kind of let into me. At a certain point, I'm kind of baffled at watching this movie. It's like, this is creating this level of enthusiasm? Like, this is... And I don't know if I should even be blaming Colin Trevorrow for this because it's so clearly a manufactured by, committee kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
Where it's a bunch of people in a room saying, what does a Jurassic Park movie need? Well, it needs a lot of Honda product placement, and it needs, a lot of stereotyping, and it needs a white guy at the center with no character, and it needs, blah, 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 blah. It needs the Raptors again, and we need to hint that we're going to do something original, but then we're going to backtrack and do the plot of the other movies.
And then... we need to make the end of the movie has to be, we can't beat the giant genetic freak dinosaur we made, so we have to make a robot version of that dinosaur to fight that dinosaur.
But that would be so much better. And
yes, it would, because the people making Jurassic Park movies haven't seen enough Godzilla movies. It's just what I'm saying.
And here's the thing. This will be a controversial opinion, but I'll say it. I think this is easily the worst of the Jurassic Park sequels.
Ooh.
And... I think a lot of people are just saying by default, it has to be the best because those other two are, just so bad and everything.
Jurassic Park 2 is okay.
Jurassic Park 2 is okay. Here's the thing about The Lost World. It's directed by Steven Spielberg.
That's right, yeah.
He knows how to direct action. There is the scene with the trailer where they're hanging off the cliff in the RV.
It's a great scene.
That alone.
Glass is cracking and stuff.
There's nothing anywhere near that good in Jurassic World. There's nothing anywhere near that good in Jurassic Park 3. And I would say Jurassic Park 3 has stuff that is better than this movie. So, Jurassic Park 3 at least doesn't make me offended that I'm watching a movie near 2015 with that plot about women in it. It's like, there's just something about this movie that is so recycled. Like, The Lost World at the time was at least trying to do something different than the Jurassic Park 1 formula.
Yeah.
They go to a new island. It's a different kind of thing. It's not a theme park. Jurassic Park 3 was kind of a rehash of that, so not as good. So I think they go in descending order of quality. But yeah, and the thing is, now we're going to have a million of these movies. And I wonder, and especially the way Jurassic World goes, no one in a million weird years would let them open a fucking dinosaur theme park again. So what's the plot at this point? And there's so many plot holes.
What you have, Godzilla's already set up.
Yeah.
Just do the crossover, it fixes everything.
And there's so many bad plot holes in Jurassic World. I kept leaning over to my brother and whispering about them, and I never do that in movies, but it was just infuriating me. It's there's this scene with the main two kid characters. They're out in this little
they brought kids or main characters again?
Yeah. Anyway,
That's
they always do
surprise.
that. Yeah. So they're in this little gerbil
Do they get
ball.
eaten?
No, they live.
Fuck.
It sucks.
This movie sucks.
Anyway, but they're in this little rotating gerbil ball that moves through the dinosaur field. It's one of those, as you've seen in mini theme parks, it's one of those little cars that you get to drive.
Yeah.
And somehow it's completely driven by the driver in the car, and they have no automated way to get the thing back.
Did they attend a theme park that just did not put any safety precautions in whatsoever?
There's none. Everything could be prevented with the most basic safety measures. And at one point they're saying well, we can't evacuate because we go out of business. We don't even have evacuation measures. And it's you're in Central America. There are hurricanes and tsunamis. That would be an evacuation measure.
I think that's illegal at some point for you as this big theme park not to have evacuation measures. Take dinosaurs out of the equation because that just even makes it stupider that they wouldn't. It's any place that will have that many people in a big gated area, there are the government regulates that stuff at some point, it's a thing where they need to, if you watch the Zero Dark 30 kind of military movie, there's in the credits, there's this big list of military advisors and stuff, and all these guys, there's actual Marines and sergeants that were at the production of the movie to advise that stuff. It's they just needed theme park security consultant, just one dude to be there's I think we'd put some seatbelts here.
Yeah.
It's I'm pretty sure we would have a fail-safe for this car.
Yeah.
We would have some evacuation procedures.
Yeah. Okay, two other quick things.
Okay.
One, Vincent D'Onofrio is the bad guy in this movie.
Yes. I saw him in the shot of one of the trailers.
As good as he is in Daredevil is as bad as he is in this.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, he's bad. It's not his fault, really, but he's bad.
This just seems like something that Vincent D'Onofrio wanted to make some money. So because he's never in big blockbuster movies, you know, he always takes smaller roles.
He's a military guy who wants to use the raptors to fight our wars, but it doesn't make any sense.
No, that should be the whole movie.
Yeah, but
the movie should be that already happened. That's what the movie should be.
I agree. That would be more interesting, but his specific plan in the movie makes no sense.
They should strap guns to the raptors as well.
Yeah. Okay, and the other thing. So you know how every Jurassic Park movie has to have the moment where the jackass asshole guy gets eaten in the most gruesome way possible?
Yes.
In the first movie, it's the guy who's on the toilet and he gets eaten by the T-Rex, right? In this movie, they give that moment to this poor woman who is just bringing around the nephews of the Bryce Dallas Howard character. She did nothing wrong. She's a nice person. She's barely in the movie. And 3 pterodactyls come and eat her, throw her to another one, break her spine, throw her into a megalodon, and then the megalodon eats her alive. It is horrifically sadistic, and that moment was just a breaking point for me of this movie doesn't just have outdated values, it really hates women. What the fuck is up with this? I don't know. That was, because it's you can't applaud that. She did nothing wrong. You do that to Vincent D'Onofrio, not to this poor woman. It's so fucked up. Anyway.
Okay, here's a question.
Yeah.
Jeff Goldblum, does he have a cameo?
No.
Fuck this movie.
No.
Fuck this movie. Fuck.
Yeah.
That's... No. Come on.
The only guy from the original movies is B.D. Wong, who was the scientist in Jurassic Park 1. Because everyone loved that character.
It's I just think of him as the guy from SVU because he played a recurring character on that show. I didn't even remember that he was in. They should have brought Samuel L. Jackson. Did Samuel L. Jackson dies in that movie? Doesn't he?
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
they should have brought him back anyways. Of course he died in that movie.
Oh well, you just find his hand. So maybe he's still alive. He's just missing a hand.
Yeah, he comes back and he's half robot. He's a cyborg, and that's how you fight off the raptors. I'm coming up with so many better ideas. Because that's honestly, my problem with Jurassic Park is always that it's an okay movie, it's fun, it has a couple of really great sequences, but I feel it never went far enough. When I think about Jurassic Park, it seems so bland to me. there just needs to be something really fucking rad. It needs a robot. It needs Godzilla. It needs something that just goes that extra mile, and it just feels like it never does.
All right. Well, speaking of something that does go the extra mile, I think, let's talk about Avengers: Age of Ultron.
All right.
Because at the very least, this does have a couple of those great Joss Whedon moments where he goes crazy and does something silly, and it's great.
Yeah.
All right. It's been a while since we've seen this.
Yes.
So, Sean, let's play a game. Let's try to go back and forth and explain the plot of Avengers: Age of Ultron.
Oh.
Let's see if we can. I'll start if you want.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Do.
Okay.
I need to get the brain working.
They start in Sakova. I think that's the name of the fake Russian country.
Some like Russian Eastern European country.
Fake Eastern European. They're in Sakova. They are trying to get Baron von Hammerstein or whatever his name is. What's his name?
I can't remember. It's some Captain America villain.
Yeah. He's got Loki's scepter. Yes. And they've been trying to track down all of the Chitauri technology from Avengers 1. So they are storming his base. And everyone's fighting, and it's a big money shot. It's actually a really good shot that opens the movie with the rotating thing. Anyway, they get the scepter. The twins get free. The Maximovs.
Yeah, Scarlet Witch mind fucks Tony Stark.
Yes.
So he starts freaking out because it has all these visions and shit.
Yeah. And then he takes the scepter and it goes, Avengers, Age of Ultron.
Yes.
All right? And then the twins get away.
Strucker is the name of the guy.
Von Strucker. Okay, not Hammersmark. Okay.
I just assumed you were just saying some random thing because you didn't remember the name.
Florian von Hammersmark is a German film person, I think. That's where I get that from. Anyway, let's see. Okay. So then they come back and they have a party.
Yes.
But before they have the party, Tony decides to invent Ultron. Even though it sounds like a really bad idea, and Bruce Banner knows it sounds like a really bad idea, he goes along with it. And there's a brief, 1-minute montage, and they make Ultron, but it doesn't work. And then they go have their party, and it's actually a really fun scene, and everyone's there.
Yeah, there's a bunch of small cameos and stuff. You have Falcon.
And let's see.
There's a really funny gag where War Machine's trying to tell his story and stuff. And,
Black Widow and Bruce Banner are in love, and that's a thing. And then, let's see. Then Ultron crashes the party.
Yeah, he does.
And he does his thing about capturing
no string on me.
Yeah, and then he gets away, and everyone's mad at Tony, as they probably should be.
It's like, wait, you just made a complete artificial intelligence without us knowing it based on this alien technology? That seems dumb.
All right, and then...
you weren't even drinking at the time, Tony.
Yep. And then because and Jarvis is dead. They killed Jarvis, which is sad.
Or did they?
Well, it's coming up. Yeah. As someone described it, I think it's very true. This is like a full 22-episode season of a Joss Whedon show in 2 hours.
That's a very fair description, yeah.
Okay, so in the next episode, what happens is, let's see. So they don't have their internet anymore or something, and Tony can't get to his archives, but they find out they have paper archives, and they find that Andy Serkis is in Africa doing something with uridium or whatever it's called. What's it?
Vibranium. Wakanda. So
Wakanda.
there's some brief...
set up for Black Panther.
Yeah, Black Panther, who's the prince of this magical African nation, Wakanda, where the vibranium, which is what Captain America's shield is made out of, and is a super precious metal because it absorbs all energy that impacts it.
And they find out that this relates to Ultron because of some weird symbol, MacGuffin. They go to Africa.
Well, did you say Ultron's whole plan so far seems to be that he just wants to make a cooler body for himself and accelerate evolution in a AI way.
We never really find out what Ultron's plan is, but we'll go on.
He was connected to the internet, and he was like, humans need to fucking die, which is a motivation I can sympathize with.
But they don't put it that... Anyway, I think a lot of got cut, and we're going to talk about that.
A lot got cut from this movie, for sure.
Obviously. Anyway, so let's see. They go to Wakanda, and they fight...
No, they don't. They never in Wakanda.
Oh, sorry, they're in Africa.
Yes.
And they go to that shipyard, and they fight Andy Serkis, and then Ultron comes with the twins.
Yeah, Scarlet Witch mindfucks everyone, and there's a bunch of stuff that's cut.
Yep, and it becomes... and got a lot of good stuff. This is
There's good stuff, yes.
This is when Age of Ultron becomes the Buffy episode where everyone gets high and sees their inner demons.
Yeah.
That's what Avengers Age of Ultron is. All right, and then Hulk goes high, and he's out fighting in the city, and Tony gets the Hulkbuster.
And he goes, rah, bong,
and then you get one of those great Joss Whedon moments where he goes, go to sleep, and he's punching him a bunch. That's great.
Yeah, and he drops him through a whole building.
Yeah.
And Man of Steel, take note.
Yes.
That's how you do an action scene where you're trying to keep the people safe while trying to defeat this guy who's destroying the whole city.
Okay.
That's how that Man of Steel action scene should have been filmed.
We're going to have a whole discussion about that later because I do want to talk about that.
It just occurred to me, so I want to bring it up.
Okay, yeah. So you have all that, And then they're all really sad, so they go to Hawkeye's wife's house on a farm.
Which I loved that whole part.
That whole part's great.
Yeah.
And they go to... A lot of this sounds sarcastic, but this is good.
It's probably one of my favorite parts of the whole movie.
Yeah.
Is that all the farm stuff.
Anyway, so they're at the farm. It's Linda Cardellini. I love that she's part of the Marvel Universe now. She's one of my favorite actresses. That's good. And
Captain America cut some wood.
Yep. Thor goes off to do something in a pool. I'm not even going to try to do all that.
Thor sets up the next Avengers movies.
Yeah.
He goes and finds out what the Infinity Gems are.
Yeah, and frankly, shut the fuck up about the Infinity Gems until you're ready to do something with it, Marvel.
Thor goes and gets his subplot cut out of the movie.
Yeah, obviously. So Thor goes and gets a subplot cut out of the movie while they cut some wood at the farm, and then Nick Fury talks to them, and then they decide their next plan of action.
Fuck Nick Fury.
And this is where it breaks down for me, because Tony has to go find something in the internet, and he finds Jarvis. Meanwhile, they have to go find what Ultron is doing with the scientist in Korea, and she's building a new body.
With the vibranium.
Right, and then, they get the body away.
Yeah,
and Black
Ultron's
Widow,
downloading himself into the body, and they stop it and get it away from him.
And Black Widow gets kidnapped.
Yes,
and then...
very short amount of time.
Yeah. And then they bring the thing back to Stark Tower, and Tony Stark decides to do his stupid idea again. But then Thor thinks it's a good idea because he comes and takes lightning and puts the thing in the thing, and
it becomes the Infinity Gem of Wisdom in the new body,
and it becomes the Vision, which again is really cool. I like the Vision.
Yeah. But, and so it's like Jarvis is downloaded into the body and becomes Vision. And it's voiced by Paul Bettany. And it's cool.
Yeah, and then at some point in here, the twins have become good guys because of the train thing, and they found out that his plan was to destroy all of humanity. Yes. Right? Wanda found that.
Yeah. It's a Scarlet Witch, Deus Ex Machina into there, and it's like,
right,
you're the villain of this movie. I thought you were the protagonist. Oh gosh darn.
Yes. So then they find out that Ultron's plan is to make Sokovia into a Hayao Miyazaki movie and a floating island in the sky, and then he's going to drop it on people.
So they be like the meteor that killed the dinosaurs. So it's actually kind of a cool way to destroy the world.
Right. And they go to Sokovia because Black Widow gives them the transmission from the thing.
Yes, because she was kidnapped for some reason, and Bruce Banner shows up and gets her out somehow. Then nobody's paying attention.
Yeah, and then
Ultron just left.
And then he pushes her in a... Well, at this point, the island's in the sky, so... Yeah. And then she pushes him in a hole, and they go up, and he's Hulk now, and they fight, and they fight, and they save everyone.
And they fight.
Because he comes up with the thing. And they adopt the Fire Emblem stance, where they have the thing they need to protect, so they circle it, and fight off... They let everyone come to them. That's my default Fire Emblem move. Yes. So there you go. And then they fight. And then it turns out beating Ultron was really surprisingly easy.
While they were fighting, they save a lot of people.
Also good.
And then they fight some more.
We'll come back to this. They save a lot of people with Nick Fury and the whole Helicarrier thing, which apparently is not actually a tie-in to that stupid S.H.I.E.L.D. show, even though it seems like it should have been.
Sure, yeah.
Like there should have been characters from the show on that thing, but they're not, and that baffled a lot of people. Okay.
They should have just had all the characters of the show kill Ultron, and this is a huge ad for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Okay. And they kill Ultron, and it's really easy, and then they all go home, and no one's mad at Tony anymore for some reason, and he goes away.
He's so lovable.
And he is very lovable. And they make some new Avengers, and then he's about to say Avengers Assemble, and we cut, and I was a little sad.
Oh, and Quicksilver is dead.
Oh yeah, Quicksilver's dead, but we didn't care about him because he was in the movie for like 5 minutes. Alright, so that's Avengers Age of Ultron.
But they're going to cross dimensions in one of the future movies to go to the X-Men world and get the Quicksilver for there, because Wanda misses her brother.
Okay, sounds good.
That's my theory.
Okay. And then there's a really bad scene in the credits where we see Thanos get the Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like nothing. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. So, Sean, have I satisfactorily refreshed your memory?
Yes, that is, as far as I can recall, that is what happened in Avengers Age of Ultron.
Sean, it's been about a month. What did you think of Avengers Age of Ultron?
I think it's good. It's not as good as Avengers 1. It has a lot of high points and a lot of low points. It's a very messy movie, as we said. A lot of stuff is really obviously cut out. I'm curious to see what sort of the home release stuff is going to be like. How much, an extended edition of that movie will look like, and how much of that stuff will get put back in. But what is there is really fun. The characters are strong. The characters are who you want the characters to be. Joss Whedon is still masterful at balancing all the different characters together. Even though Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver don't get a huge amount of screen time or development, they're still fun characters to have around. I wish they were fleshed out a little bit more, but they have enough. They have enough that the movie works.
And Scarlet Witch is a very good catalyst for things.
Yes, and Ultron is a villain that needed more development, but I like him. The performance is fun.
Well, it's James Spader, and that makes it great. So
the performance is really fun, but they needed more motivation and development for him to make it very compelling.
Well, here's what I agree with a lot of that. I agree. I think it's not as good as Avengers 1 or Captain America Winter Soldier, or frankly some of the other ones. But it's good, and I think what I said when I saw it, and I still think this, is that overall, even as much as was clearly cut and as many masters as he had to serve, Joss Whedon kept his voice alive in this thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And I love that about it, and I love that he very clearly chose to focus this movie on the people who don't have solo movies.
Mm-hmm.
So Tony and Cap and Thor are all major plot devices in the film, but they don't have huge arcs or anything. And I like that the main characters in this movie are very much Black Widow, Hulk, and Hawkeye.
Yes.
And I think he does such a great job with all three of them.
Yeah, especially, like, I love that, like, Hawkeye got a lot of stuff to do, because, like, he was just so complete. Like, he was the Quicksilver of the first Avengers movie. Like, he was so underserved. It was, like, nice. It's like, he's a real character. And it almost, like, the fact that he was so underserved in Avengers 1 made, like, his character stuff in Avengers 2, like, that much better. Like, the fact that, like, also, like, they use that when they go to the farm of, like, oh, yeah, like, we know nothing about this guy. Because you're kind of, like, seeing it from the perspective of Cap and the others. It's like, oh, yeah, like, he's his whole character. He has a fucking family.
Yep.
Like, he has stuff that he cares about. And it's like, we didn't give a shit about that in Avengers 1 because we were too focused on the big stuff.
Well, and I think through Hawkeye and Black Widow and Hulk, Joss Whedon even manages to find a good thematic through line for this film, which is about just the very simple nature of heroism and why these people do the things they do and choose to serve in the way they serve. And I think having Hawkeye be kind of the linchpin for that as the most mortal of all of them.
Yeah, and like the only guy who's kind of normal.
Yeah, works really, really well for it. And my favorite scene in the whole movie easily is his speech to Scarlet Witch when they're in the flying Sokovia, and he says, "You walk out that door, you're an Avenger." That's a great, great scene. Mm-hmm. And, you know, but throughout, I think this movie feels so much more human than it probably should. And I think some of that is the Hawkeye stuff. I think it's the Black Widow Hulk romance, which I think sounds like a bad idea on paper, but I thought was very well executed.
I thought it worked really well.
Worked really well, and I think the amount of humor in it was really good. And it's very Joss Whedon humor, but I also think it's natural for this kind of movie. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes it's overdone, but I also think that's probably because there's stuff missing, and that it would be paced better with that.
Yeah.
But overall, I just think it's very fun, it's very human, it's really big and maybe sometimes too big, but I think it keeps up a lot of what the other Marvel movies have done well, and it's an enjoyable experience.
Yeah.
You may have heard from my sarcastic tone in the plot synopsis, my biggest problem with it is that it has to be a middle-of-the-road sequel where Ultron ultimately doesn't matter at all because there's these Infinity Gauntlet shit out there, and that's bigger and more important, and ultimately Ultron they can just kind of beat in 2 hours, and he wasn't that big a threat anyway, and none of it feels like it was all that consequential. And that's my biggest problem with it. Like, Avengers 1 was the payoff to 4 other movies.
Yeah.
And it only feels like payoff. It doesn't feel like they're setting up a bunch of other shit. And Captain America 2 is clearly setting up some stuff in the future, but it also feels like a lot of payoff to Cap's personal arcs.
Yeah.
And I really hope Marvel aims more in the future for payoff rather than setup, because there's too much setup in Age of Ultron. It's kind of the Iron Man 2 problem. This is a much better movie than Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the same thing, where you get to the end and it's like, well, nothing we saw here really mattered all that much, because ultimately there's more to come. So that would be my overview.
Yeah, like I basically agree with those points as well. Like it's one of the things that's tricky about doing this sort of like serialized movie thing. It's like I feel like it's inevitable if they keep on doing this that like every couple of years is going to be one movie that's just like, and it was Iron Man 2 last time, it's Avengers 2 now. It's like this one movie that's saddled with a bunch of stuff that it needs to do if you want to keep the serialized movie thing going. It's just like you sometimes have to take the hits to set up the things that you want to do later on. And hopefully the payoff for like Thanos and the Infinity Gems, like hopefully that stuff good. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. I still think Thanos looks really silly, and they're going to have to up their CGI game with that if they're going to integrate him at all. But we'll see. I mean, like, there's some great effects work in this movie. Like, Ultron, I think that's one of the things, is Ultron, I don't think is all that fleshed out a villain, and I don't know what his plan was before he decided on the Sokovia thing, because clearly something was cut there where he had another plan with this evolution thing that he was building towards, and he changes his mind at some point, but all of that's gone, and we just get to the Sokovia thing, and it's all a little muddled. But I will say, I think as a CGI creation, he's really good. Like, he looks cool, he's integrated well, he looks like a part of the world, and I think there's a lot of good effects work in this movie.
I also really like the effects on Vision. I think he looks cool. Like, the face looks really good and
stuff.
Well,
he's mostly actually Paul Bettany in prosthetics.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
That's not. I mean, when he's floating, there's some CGI, but no, it's all makeup and prosthetics, which I think it helps with that.
Yeah.
Vision's a good character. I mean, there's so many characters. We could do the 3-hour podcast version of this and go character by character.
Yeah,
it's unnecessary.
Yeah,
But I mean, they did jam pack a lot in here, and I think, frankly, my takeaway both times I've seen the movie is, boy, that worked a lot better than it should have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it's a really big movie. Like, it's a movie that's too big for its own good, but like it still manages to be really very enjoyable despite that.
So let's talk about a couple of we can go back and forth like characters that worked. We talked about Hawkeye. Jeremy Renner definitely. It's proof that he was good casting now because he didn't have anything to do last time. He's really the heart of the movie this time in some ways. Scarlett Johansson has gone just straight up to being maybe my favorite person in this universe at this point. I think she's so good in this role. She's so charming and charismatic. She should have a dozen franchises she's headlining if Chris Pratt can have a bunch of them too. And I think she's really good in this one.
I think she's going to be the star of Jurassic World 2.
It would be better. Anyway, and I think pairing her with Bruce Banner was smart because, one, she and Mark Ruffalo just have great chemistry.
Yeah.
And he's really good in this. They both are. But also, I just think he found some nice notes to play there.
Yeah, like the bridging some similarities between the, like, you don't think of the Hulk and Black Widow as being similar, but like her backstory of being like basically taken as a kid and like abused and trained to be this like elite assassin against her will, and then Bruce Banner not having his own will in terms of like turning into the Hulk. Like, there's some interesting common ground that they build there that like you wouldn't expect. And then it also like ties into Avengers 1 in a weird way where it's just like you don't. I feel like if you go back and watch Avengers 1, it's like that love plot is set up more than you'd think just because she's the one who goes out and gets him in the first place, you know?
Yes, absolutely. And I have to rant against the internet for a minute here.
Yes,
I don't.
I wanted to too, but like I wasn't sure if you wanted to broach it or not.
Oh, I'm going to broach it because here's the thing. And look, if I think something is sexist and doesn't work on that level, I will be the first person to call it out. Yeah. I was disgusted by Jurassic World, and I've been vocal about that. So it's not like I'm trying to be an apologist for this because I like Avengers. I think other Marvel movies have absolutely had gender issues sometimes. I think this is one that doesn't. And I'll be clear about that. I just think if you didn't see it, when this movie came out, there was a whole shitstorm on the internet. Most of it, I should say, before the movie came out and before people had seen it, because they had heard things like Black Widow gets taken captive, or Black Widow says she's a monster because she is sterile, and all this stuff. And it was all out of context, and then even after the movie came out, people continuing to ignore context and try to say, well, it's sexist because they gave Black Widow a love interest, and because they said she's a monster for not being able to have kids and all this stuff. None of that is in context, and I'll take them bottom up. So the thing that she's taken captive, everyone in the movie is put in peril at some point or another. Black Widow is taken captive because she is the most active member of the team at the time she's doing that.
Yeah.
That's the point there, and when she's taken captive, it's Joss Whedon riffing on that thing, as he always does. He did this 7 seasons on Buffy, 5 seasons on Angel, Firefly, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Where the woman gets taken captive, and really it's not a problem for her because she can make a makeshift spy doodad in her cell and contact Hawkeye, and she's actually fine. The reason, like, her being captured is actually what leads them to Ultron's base, because she's captured and put in Ultron's base. It's like, you could almost argue that she was captured on purpose. Yes, it's a narrative mechanic thing, and I don't think that's sexist because it happens to the one woman on the team. The fact that they only have the one woman on the team, they need to work on that a little bit, and I think they are with Scarlet Witch and Captain Marvel, and we'll see about this stuff.
And that's not even like the movie's fault. It's like that reaches back into like the source material.
Right, and I think overall they did a very good job with her on that. And also the other thing, a man does come to save her. The first thing she does to that man is shove him in a hole to make him the Hulk against his will.
Yeah.
Again, context matters.
Although, to be fair, this actually has nothing to do with like the feminist side of it. I just found the scene where the Hulk comes, or like Bruce Banner comes to get her, very weird. It's just like
there's no resistance.
Yeah, it's just like he just like there's no even like location establishing shot. He just walks up and is like, "Hey, I'll get you out." I'm like,
yeah,
what?
There's a lot of weird editing moments where
like fucking how did you get here? Like, when did this happen? Like, this did not follow for the previous cut.
Like we said, clearly scenes got cut.
Yeah.
All right. Other thing, that's discussion that they have in the Hawkeye's house, where, and I think that's a beautiful scene, very human scene in the movie, and she says, we're both monsters. I think that is a misinterpretation of that scene if you think she's saying that because she's sterilized. I don't think Joss Whedon's message is that women who can't have kids are monsters.
Any more than guys who can't have kids or monsters, because that's like the whole context of the scene. Is that they're relating to one another, because Bruce Banner is obviously sterile because he got blasted with gamma radiation, and she's sterile because of the procedures operated on her when she was becoming a Black Widow.
Right. And also that she's an assassin, that she's killed all these people, she feels bad about it.
People because he's lost control.
Yes. So they're both talking about control and their pasts, and it's building off conversations in previous movies, like all the Red Ledger stuff in the first Avengers. Context really does matter. You can't just be angry for something on its own. It is about the arc. And that leads me to the last thing. It's not sexist in an absolute vacuum. If you just say, okay, they took the one woman and gave her a love interest to make her interesting. Sure, that doesn't sound great, but if you actually watch the movie, that's not what they're doing. For one, they didn't give Black Widow a love interest. They took two pre-existing main characters and put them together.
Yes.
That's not just giving the female character a love interest. There is more to it than that.
Yes.
It's also one that had been established before, I think, in terms of their chemistry, and it's not a romantic relationship where either person's agency is robbed by the other.
Yeah, and it's also, like, I wouldn't even really call it a romance subplot all that much. It's just both of their character arcs sort of, like, intersect with them coming together and, like, working off of each other, but it's, like, it's not structured in the way that, like, for, like, some other Marvel movies have with, like, Jane Foster in the Thor movies or something. Like, that's a romance subplot. Like, this is just, like, a character arc.
Yeah. And I think there are plenty of examples of superhero movies where you take the woman, you put her with the guy, and suddenly her agency goes away. Yes. That's not what happens here.
The old Spider-Man movies, like, for all their things they do well, like, they have that fault with Mary Jane.
Yeah, sure. And especially the new ones.
Yes.
Way worse with Emma Stone and Gwen Stacy.
I just don't even want to talk about
this. I know. But anyway, so I think, having the romance there, if anything, I think it empowers both of those characters, and it gives new sides to them. And look, at the end of the day, I thought Black Widow was my favorite character in this movie. I think she's one of the most vibrant characters in this movie, and he gave her more screen time, I think, than Thor or Captain America. So,
maybe even combined. Thor's only in, like, 3 minutes of this movie or something.
Yeah, so I don't get the sexism claims on this one.
Neither do I.
And what frustrates me is that I think all that energy people expend online towards this, there's so many worse things in the world.
Yeah.
You could all be rallying more against Gamergate, because good God, those people aren't gone yet.
Or, hey, like it's weird that, like, Jurassic World, there are, like, I've seen a lot of pieces and stuff written about Jurassic World. I feel like there's not as much of a frenzy about it as there was for Avengers 2
Not
somehow.
nearly, and good God, is Jurassic World sexist. I mean, again, they tear a woman apart with pterodactyls, and she did nothing wrong. So, I think the internet can get really annoying about these things sometimes. This is one that just had me scratching my head, because that is not this movie's specific problem.
Yeah, like, I agree. Like, it's something where it's awkward, because when you're talking about something like, like feminism and the representation of women in movies, like, you're talking about a problem that's, like, so wide that, like, when you're trying to, like, nitpick this very specific individual line taken out of the context of the way that line is used for the entire scene, it's like, yes, like, that line on its own, like, related to some, like, broader history of, like, how women are used in movies, you can, like, make some sort of connections, but it's like those connections aren't actually significant. You have to look at Avengers in its context for the whole, like, movie industry, for, like, blockbuster film, and within that, you're just talking about blockbuster films in general. Like, you can't, like, no individual movie on its own can actually be sexist. It has to be sexist in the context of everything else.
Yeah. And, fuck people. The Entourage movie just came out. There are so many better targets.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my thoughts on that stuff. Any other characters you wanted to mention?
I think we should talk about Vision, since he's new. And
I love the Vision.
He's not in it for a whole lot, which is a little bit disappointing. Like, he just, like, his character gets wrapped up so much in being the solution to the plot. He's kind of a Deus Ex Machina, almost kind of literally himself. But, like, he's a cool presence. I'm excited for him to be in the future movies. Like, Vision is a character, he's, like, kind of always been an Avenger. Like, not from the very beginning, but he's, when Vision showed up, I feel like he was on the Avengers team, like, forever. So, that's cool. They have Vision and Scarlet Witch now, both in the universe, and they have romantic stuff in the comics. So, maybe we can explore that.
I just think, we've had Paul Bettany's voice in these movies for so long now, and I think he did a great job adapting that to physicality here. And I like that it kind of honors Jarvis as a character, bringing him into this.
Yes.
But now we have the Vision there, and I look forward to seeing more with him. I definitely think he is one of the weirder elements in this movie, and I love that.
Yeah, they just have that really kind of surreal scene at the end with him and Ultron, like, alone, and they have that conversation. It's good conversation. It's just like, yeah, Vision is a cool character. Like I'm excited to see more of him.
Absolutely. I would echo what you said about Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver.
Yeah.
I find Scarlet Witch more interesting as a character.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously put more emphasis on her because they just killed Quicksilver.
Right, and, we'll see.
Someone had to die in the movie, I guess.
Someone did, and I wonder if there's a version of the script where it's Hawkeye, because it really feels like that's what they're building to.
I mean, it's absolutely set up. Like, he had, he tripped, 500 death flags over the... he might as well just, stepped off, onto that island and just said, well, good thing I'm retiring tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's that's how much this movie wanted to kill that character.
And clearly, they won't let Joss Whedon kill characters they have to use in the future, so...
And I'm actually kind of glad that they didn't kill Hawkeye, because I feel like it'd be a huge bummer if, he gets killed off in the first movie that really uses him.
I would agree. But, the Quicksilver...
But then it's also just kind of a bummer that they just kill off Quicksilver before they ever really had a chance to use him.
Okay, so here's the question. Okay. Whose Quicksilver was better, this one or Bryan Singer?
I mean, I guess Bryan Singer, just because it was more of a standout character. Yeah. He just feels so background here. Yeah. It's not even, to say anything about the performances or anything like that. It's just, the sequence that they used for him in Days of Future Past was a lot more memorable and, interesting.
Yeah, because what I would say is I like the, visual design of Quicksilver in this movie a lot more. I probably like the performance more. But I do think he's not used in any real memorable way, and the scene in Days of Future Past is a really good scene.
It's, the best scene of that whole movie.
Yeah.
At least, especially in terms of action, but,
speaking of action scenes, what was your favorite one in this movie? Because there's a ton.
I really like the Hulkbuster scene. I'm always usually a fan of, the second act action scene that gets to be more creative and doesn't have to, deal with, we have to kill everything, and this is huge battle. It's just, we get to have, focus on one really cool fight. And the Hulkbuster fight is that fight for this movie.
It was definitely very good. And, okay, I'll do my spiel now. On the Man of Steel point.
Yes.
I concede, watching this movie...
Now you see what I'm talking about. What I envisioned the action scene in Man of Steel would be idealized.
I can totally get the complaint about Man of Steel, and I probably have it myself now, because I agree. I looked at this and I'm like, it's actually even more compelling having them go around and save people, because it adds layers to the characters, it adds layers to the action sequence... And it's just interesting to have that both in the Hulkbuster scene and at the end. It just made it all around more compelling to me. And I like the Man of Steel action very much.
Yeah.
But I do think you could have some of... And it would be an interesting arc for, Kal-El in that movie if he's starting and things are getting destroyed and he's not aware of it at first. And then maybe he starts realizing, I have a duty here, and really trying his hardest to do that. And if he didn't save everyone, we wouldn't blame him for it. Yeah. But he would try. And...
Yeah, exactly. And it's just something... It's a little touch... that you need of just adding some moments in where, Iron Man is fixated on that entire fight scene, and it's true the end fight scene as well. The primary objective is to save all the people at risk right now. The secondary objective is to defeat the Hulk or to defeat Ultron, but it's the primary thing we are trying to do is save these fucking people.
Yeah.
And that adds a level of tension to the action scene that it wouldn't have otherwise, because it's there's some palpable, risk at that you have just by, having the populace in danger. But then also, I feel like it just adds an immediate heart to the action scene that it wouldn't have otherwise, and just makes it feel like a more generic action movie if you don't do that. It's the little touch it needs to make it feel like a superhero movie, and not just an over-the-top, kind of sci-fi action movie, It's and that's the kind of stuff watching the Superman cartoon and stuff. That's what they always did, and so that's what I always envision for those kinds of action scenes. I think this is Avengers 2 does that better than any other superhero movie I've seen, and it's just a bummer that the Superman movie wasn't able to do that, because it's an easy detail to overlook. I feel when you're making the movie, but it's if you're for someone like me or other people who are huge fans of this genre from the comic books and the cartoons, it's something that you subconsciously notice no matter what when you're watching the movie of all these people are dying, and you're then, you, Superman, or, whoever, are not looking out for them. It's something that, I feel as a huge fan of the source material.
Yeah.
It's having, that kind of action scene be there. It's yes, this is what it needs to be. It's so gratifying,
I totally agree, and I think I just needed to see a really good example of it to fully get that, and I think Avengers 2 does that. And I just think I've been thinking about this now, and I think Man of Steel is just symptomatic of a larger problem in most superhero movies, where they adopt this very, I would say, utilitarian standpoint on things, where it's greatest good for the greatest number. So for Superman, it actually doesn't matter what's happening to Metropolis. I have to defeat, Zod, because if I don't defeat Zod, he'll destroy all of Earth. So if all these people die, at least I've saved the world. And I think that's the thing in the Chris Nolan Batman movies.
Which for Batman, that's fair enough for like that character in that setting.
And but they did it in the Spider-Man movies and a lot of the newer ones, not the older. That's actually something the Sam Raimi movies do a great job at.
They always did that in the Sam Raimi movies,
which is fantastic. I mean, that train sequence, that's why it's so great.
Exactly.
He could leave those people. That's not the most important thing in the world right now.
Yeah,
but it is for Peter Parker.
Ock, but no, he needs to save all the people.
Yeah. So, and I don't think you ever see Andrew Garfield save someone in his 2 Spider-Man movies.
The only person he ever saves is himself.
Yeah, he can't even save Gwen Stacy, because fuck it. Anyway, let's see. So what else should we talk about with Avengers? I feel we've covered most of it.
Yeah, it's... the one thing I thought was a little bit lacking, and I think it's because a lot of it got cut out, and because he had to be used for the overarching plot, is that Thor feels like he's the only character that's really underserved in the movie.
That's what I wanted to mention.
And it's definitely something where it's like, he also kind of felt like he was the most underserved in Avengers 1 as well, of like the big ones. It's just like... I love Thor so much. I think he's, of like the main Avengers in these movies, he's kind of my favorite because it's just like there's something about Chris Hemsworth. There's a certain joviality to him that I really love. It's like it's kind of a bummer that it's like, oh, he's barely in this movie, and when he is, it's like he's going off to pick up Peter Skarsgård to go like into a cave and take a bath. I don't know what's going on.
He has a couple of good moments. I love his argument with Tony Stark about whose girlfriend is better. That's great.
That's fucking great. That's great. And like the whole scene with
the hammer stuff is fantastic.
That's fantastic. There's like a really small moment where Cap gets up to do it, and it shifts briefly, and the camera angle's perfect, where like it shifts field of view, like focus onto Thor, and he's like his face just glowers for a second. It's like, oh shit.
And I think Chris Hemsworth is a total pro in this movie because you're right. He doesn't have a lot to do, but man, he tackles it all with that same enthusiasm. He's a real team player in this. But if there was a bigger plot for Thor in here, I would have loved to see it. It's clearly cut to the bone. It's kind of, I don't know. And I would just wonder if Thor must be the hardest to integrate, though.
And I definitely recognize that because he's the most powerful member of the team. He's kind of on a different level than the rest of the team in a lot of ways. It's like... I feel like if you're going to, you either have to not do a lot of Thor or make Thor kind of the focus, maybe, is the problem.
And I'm guessing he will be more in the next one. If they're going to space,
Yeah, and the battles are going to be bigger, the opponents are going to be stronger.
So we'll see. I hope the Marvel Universe doesn't break under the weight of its own storytelling. Because
that's the only way this is probably going to end, is that eventually, it's just going to get too big.
Because the one thing I am worried about, we've got Captain America Civil War next year, and it has virtually every member of this ensemble.
Yeah, it's basically Avengers 3 based on the casting.
The only people from this movie who are not in it and who live, so Quicksilver's not in it, but Thor is not in it, and Bruce Banner wasn't going to be in it, but apparently Mark Ruffalo says he's shooting. So everyone's in it, and there's a lot of new characters being introduced, and we haven't seen how the Russo brothers handle this much stuff. And if they do
it's also an open question about how much those people, it could very easily be at the beginning of the movie or something.
Right.
He's with them, and then he has to set off on his own to do his own movie thing or something.
Yeah. So I think if the Russo brothers pull it off and prove they're as good as Joss Whedon is at balancing these plates, then I think we're in good hands and I'm not worried. If Civil War is a mess, that's worrisome because they're also doing Avengers 3 and 4. And I actually think it's probably good that the next Avengers is a two-parter because...
Yes, based on this movie, absolutely.
Yeah. That actually sounds like a legitimate use of the two-part format.
Yes.
It's very rare these days.
Yeah. And plus with that, they're not splitting some pre-existing source material into two parts artificially.
Right.
And thus just being well, the book just keeps on going, but we're just going to stop here for now. Pick up with us next year.
Yeah, this is the bookmark.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what these movies are. And it's something where I think it is kind of interesting that at the end of this movie, they specifically create a new Avengers team with with Vision and Scarlet Witch and Falcon and War Machine, and have a lot of the old guys kind of go off and be we're going to do our own thing. Tony Stark's I've been doing these movies longer than any of you guys. They pay me so much money for these movies. I'm not going to get an Iron Man 4. I'm just going to go be in some of these movies again and then kind of retire.
Yeah. Does it bother you at all that there's no ramifications for Tony for what he does in this movie?
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. It's also kind of weird coming off of specifically Iron Man 3 that his character arc doesn't feel like it connects to the events of Iron Man 3, where it's I didn't love Iron Man 3, but I thought they handled Tony's character arc in that movie really well. That was the best part about the movie and what the movie was focused on. And it's a little bit disappointing that, and I'm sure it's really difficult when you're making these movies to connect them in that way, but I wish that his character arc had evolved naturally from where Iron Man 3 left off with him destroying the suits and stuff,
And the thing is, I think if there had been some more ramifications for him at the end of this movie, I think you could have made that connection clear.
Yeah.
Because I think if the message is Tony just pathologically always thinks he's doing the right thing even when he's doing the wrong thing, and he can't help himself even when he thinks he's gotten past it, and it's a tragic arc that he can never change, that's good. I think you could do that, and that could have been the end here. And with Civil War coming anyway, you might as well have done a Cap Iron Man split at the end here.
Yeah.
But we'll see. And I assume they've actually got plans for Civil War that set this up. So maybe it'll all work out. But it feels wonky.
Yeah. I will say, it was really cool when War Machine pops up for a brief moment in the end fight scene.
Yeah.
I thought it was a little conspicuous that Falcon's not there, though. He's in the beginning scene. He's in there at the very end with the rest of the Avengers. Just what the fuck is Falcon? What is he doing? How come Nick Fury wasn't hey, you know who I should call up? That dude who was working with Captain America who helped solve all that fucking Hydra shit last time. Maybe he should be involved.
And it's weird because they're already paying Anthony Mackie for the movie. Why
exactly.
not?
It's there must have been something happened that either they didn't expect to get him at first, so that it's maybe they filmed his stuff later or something, but it just felt really weird to me. Specifically because he was at the beginning of the movie also at the party scene. It's well, you set up that he's here, you've established his character within the context of the whole movie. What the fuck is he doing?
And he's really cool.
Yeah. It's maybe, they're on the other side of the world. Maybe he was just asleep and had his phone on vibrate or something. He gets up in the morning, he's looks at his phone, it's 50 missed calls from Nick Fury. He's shit.
That should have been the end credits scene.
That would have been a great end credits scene. That would have legitimately been really funny.
Because here's the thing. I agree you do need to do some setup for this future stuff. I don't need the stupid scene where Thanos goes and gets the glove and all that. You can do that in an actual movie. Do an actual joke or something creative.
Yeah. That was one of the post-credit scenes have gotten kind of lackluster.
Yeah.
It's not like they've ever been super amazing, but they've always kind of had something that's ooh, there's that guy. The first time they revealed Thanos, that was cool. It's because I know who Thanos is. It's that's a cool little, extra thing for fans of the movies. But it's yay, here's Howard the Duck. It's hey, here's Thanos. He's got the Infinity Gauntlet. We all knew that's what he was going to get. That's not a reveal. You could have just, randomly cut that in at any moment in the movie, and I would have understood what was going on. It's, not important.
Yeah. All right. Well, is that it for Avengers Age of Ultron?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Then let's go ahead and talk about the holy grail of modern action movies. Yeah. Mad Max, Fury Road. Sean, the people know what I think. I wrote my review. Sean, what do you think of Mad Max, Fury Road?
I guess in one word, I think it's... Okay, in 2 words. I think it's fucking awesome. It is a fucking awesome movie. Of any movie that you could use... This is called fucking awesome. This is the most fucking awesomest of them, and just in so many ways. Completely taking it on its own, ignoring the rest of my opinions on the state of modern movies. It's just an amazing fucking movie experience, just completely on its own. It's the action is intense and incredible. The characters are really well made for the movie that they need to be in. The plot is really well made for the movie that they need to be in, but it doesn't focus on having a huge amount of dialogue or exposition to create a very intricate plot or very elaborate character arcs. It allows the action to tell the story because it's an action fucking movie, and the story that they tell is a meaningful story that has a lot of very interesting themes, and it conveys all that stuff through the visuals and through the movement and action of the plot and the characters. It does not focus on creating a lot of big dialogue scenes. There's barely any fucking dialogue in the whole movie, and some people come out and say that means that the movie has no story. It's I come out and say that's that movie has the exact amount of story that it actually needs for the diegesis of the film itself.
I don't think I knew how frustrated I was with the over complexity of modern mainstream Hollywood storytelling until I saw Fury Road. Because what I said is, it absolutely does have a plot. It absolutely has themes and characters.
Yes.
But here's the thing. It's not your modern 3-act thing where you have to have all this exposition and you stop for that, then you do action, then you stop for that. It's operatic. It moves in movements. It's very musical in that you build, you crescendo, and you diminuendo, and you go back up, and you'll notice he just fades to black sometimes and then comes back in. It's not a 3-act structure. It's very musical in that way. And it is so well structured that I think it's deceptive how much is going on. I've seen this movie 3 times, and it just gets richer every time because it is all there in the action, it's all there in the experience, and there is as much depth as you want to pull out of it. Mm-hmm. Because the world that he's built is so big and so magnificent and so creative, but they don't rub your face in that. You just live with it for 2 hours, and you come out realizing that you've seen something very special, and you want to go back to it, like for me, just to study the costumes and the different ways people are talking and the different, I didn't even really fully figure out what the thing with the silver paint was until my second viewing. And then it's like, well, that's actually kind of cool that they have this whole kind of religion in this movie, but they never draw attention to it. And Max is actually, I think, a very complex character in this film, but he says all of 10 lines. Mm-hmm. And that's possible, and I think a lot of audiences just aren't even prepared for that as a possibility, and it's not their fault.
Like modern movie audiences, and probably like most movie audiences like throughout like the past century or whatever, massively underestimate what can be accomplished in a movie purely visually.
Yes.
And something where like if you're someone like me who really adores some of these older action movies from like the 60s, 70s, and 80s that were like a little more sci-fi action kind of obscure stuff when they came out, like Terminator, like the original Road Warrior and Mad Max movies, I don't know, like Escape from New York, like those are movies that like have very specific plots that are very focused on that one like single plot thread, and that's basically all it has, but it exploits everything it needs from that plot thread, and then has like the amazing action and visuals involve the audience into the movie that way, instead of just trying to like write some like really great dialogue scene or something to do a bunch of exposition and then have a very rote like fight scene,
Well, and here's the thing. I like what you just said about the kinds of movies you mentioned, and when you got to the Terminator, it made me think.
Yeah.
You and I both agree that Terminator 1 is the best of those.
Yes, absolutely.
No and question. However, that's generally not the dominant opinion of people.
No, yeah, most people say T2.
And when I said this to my brother the other day because we saw that awful Terminator Genesis trailer, and he says, "Well, I like Terminator, but I like Terminator 2 a lot more." And I do get that because Terminator 2 is the prototype for modern action movies.
Absolutely.
In that it is long, it is epic, it is plot heavy, and these are not.
It feels like that movie should end 3 times throughout its running.
Right. And none of these are necessarily complaints. I think Terminator 2 is a really good movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's a prototype for something that doesn't hit me personally quite as hard. Whereas Terminator 1, it is lean, it is fast,
it's lean,
it's dirty,
mean, it is fucking rock hard murder. It is hardcore shit.
But it's great, and I think it's actually a kind of profound movie in the end because of how just its adrenaline and its energy. And honestly, what this all goes back to, and this is why people should watch silent movies, is silent cinema. You should know that basis for things because, Charlie Chaplin is one of the great storytellers in cinematic history, and he didn't need any dialogue, and he barely needed fucking intertitles because you can tell complex human stories through visuals and stuff. And Mad Max is not a silent movie. Its sound design is very involved.
Yeah.
And you should remember that there's more to sound film than just dialogue, obviously, but it really, it's a movie first and foremost. It's not a play, and it's not a book, and it's not any of those things, which I think, Terminator 2 and Avengers and all these modern kind of action movies, they're more rooted in things like books and comics and stuff than they are movies, I think. And good God, Mad Max is pure cinema.
Yes, absolutely. And it's also something, if like me, you're kind of frustrated with modern action movies in terms of that you really like when you are watching an action scene to know that some motherfucker almost died making this and that someone bought like 10 cars and just blew them the fuck up while they just filmed it. And that's that shot. Like, there's there's a lot of CGI in Mad Max, like, obviously, and it's very well done, because it's not the focus. Like, the central thing...
It's augmenting things.
Of what's going on in the action scene is the fucking action, and the action is there is some crazy motherfucker in a car driving at like 120 miles per hour down a desert, chasing another car driving 120 miles per hour down the desert, and then someone fucking blew up one of those cars. Like, that's... Like someone just filmed that. Like if you just had the raw footage of the action scenes for most of the action scenes of this movie, I assume they would be like really awesome to watch it that way too, because there's something actually happening on the screen. It's not all just a green screen thing.
I absolutely agree, and they really did use every level of cinematic artistic tools available to them now to pull this movie off.
Exactly.
But it is rooted, I think, in real things. So the production design is beautiful, and the costume design is beyond reproach.
Yeah.
But then you also have this great cinematography by John Seale. This dude is in his 70s, like George Miller, and is just hanging off those rigs getting shots. You should look up these pictures online. They're fascinating. And... But then you do have visual effects because you have to augment the sunset and things like that, and
have,
color grading.
This unbelievable sequence with the sandstorm. That's obviously all CGI. But it's like, that's the important thing to note with this movie in terms of the effects is not that, like, I'm not asking for action movies to be all practical effects like they obviously had to be back in the day before CG was a thing. That's stupid. I don't want that. Like, that's regressing. What I want is, like, for people to understand that practical effects have their place and CGI effects have their place, and the CG needs to amplify the things of the effects that are on the screen, and then every once in a while, you can have something like this huge, incredible, like, visually just unbelievably stimulating sandstorm sequence that's just fucking mind-blowing when you watch it, and it doesn't matter that it's CGI, but like consciously I know it must be CGI because the thing that they're representing is so sort of painterly that it's like the way they handle the effects in that, which is one of the more like notable big CGI effects, something where it's like it's digital because it needs to be digital because it's like unreal. It's not real, and that's one of the things that about that specific effect makes it work. But most of the stuff like blood and explosions, that stuff is real. That stuff needs to be real. It can't be digital.
Absolutely. And I think, God, the scenes that just get me going the most in this movie are the ones that are intensely physical.
Yeah.
Like, I think, when they are coming back through the canyon, all of that stuff, and basically at that point, George Miller is orchestrating things on 4 or 5 or 6 planes of action.
Yeah.
Where you have all these rigs, you have those people on those things in the air where they're going back and forth, and those are all real stunt guys doing that.
Yes.
Tom Hardy was actually strapped to one of those things, and so you've got all these different planes of action. They're going on at once. You can tell they are because it's in the frame, it's in camera. A couple of those are composites, but most of them aren't. You can look all this up.
Yeah.
And you feel that because, as you say, there are actual stuntmen and women out there risking their lives to do this and get the shots, and there's people who have made real costumes and real makeup and real prosthetics, and it's actually in camera, and you've got an actual cameraman there, framing it up and that kind of thing. Yeah. And then you augment it with things to make it look beautiful. Just like, when you're painting, you use multiple kinds of brushes and paints and all these tools you have at your disposal, and that's what filmmakers should do.
Yes.
You can't just rely on one thing or the other.
Yeah, like CG exists, and CG is advanced to the point now where it's like, you actually need to use it in your movies because you can do so much with it. It can be so powerful. It can be so effective. It's like you just need to know when and how to use it. And I feel like most directors, especially action directors, just simply don't.
And how cool is it that George Miller and many of his cohorts in this movie, these guys in their 70s and 80s, and he knows how to use these modern tools better than all the young whippersnappers out there.
Exactly. It's something where it's like it almost has to be that way because he understands like the... It's something that's like, I used to play a lot of basketball, and the thing that they always tell you with basketball is like, you can learn all the fancy shit, like all these crazy tricks and stuff, but like the main thing is you always have to work on your fundamentals, like dribbling, shooting, like that's the game. With like it's the same thing with anything. With film, it's the fundamentals are the important thing. It doesn't matter all the fucking fancy tricks that you can put in. You need the fancy tricks because that's the name of the game now. But the fundamentals are always the fundamentals.
And I totally agree. And I think this is the problem when we have this thing in Hollywood now where we take a guy like Colin Trevorrow, who is completely untested. He's made one indie movie. He's never done action. And you throw him into Jurassic World. And I think it's pretty clear he was lost. The effects in that movie, the staging of action, that guy doesn't know the fundamentals because he's never had to work with them.
Yeah.
Joss Whedon, on the other hand, I think Avengers is obviously very CGI heavy and all that. But he can stage an action scene decently well because he spent 20 years on television, and he made Buffy with nothing and managed to do great action sequences on that, and you have to build to it. And those are the people who know what they're doing.
Yeah.
We probably should be looking to TV for directors more because they have to work with all of that.
Yeah, because they've had to work with so many limitations that they know how to overcome them.
Yes.
And when you give them something to like really let them express themselves, it's phenomenal.
Yeah. So, I mean, and there are so many images in this movie that are mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, it's a movie that really sticks with you in a visual sense.
Absolutely. I wrote in my review, I think my opening line was, my jaw dropped at the first frame of Fury Road and it didn't close till the end. And that's pretty much true for my first viewing.
Yeah.
Because that first shot of just him out in the desert, I mean, it's a gorgeous shot, and that's before you're even getting into any action stuff. My jaw drops, and then once you're in the Citadel and you're seeing all these amazing creations, and then once you're in the action sequence and you're just along for the ride, And, you know, your jaw, it's just, and there's constantly these images, even when it's a quiet scene, like when they're at night out just driving through.
Like the weird swamp area. Like, there's some great shots there.
Well, and it's because it's pace, and it's that musicality I talked about. George Miller knows when to keep his foot on the throttle for 30 straight minutes, and then he knows when to just let you kind of breathe with things.
Yeah, and seriously change the color palette and stuff to change the mood of the scene, because it's like all blue all of a sudden.
Yep.
Like, yeah, it's really...
There's a lot of just haunting and beautiful and evocative scenes, I think, of where they're just driving through that desert, and you feel like you're on a road trip with them.
Yeah.
But then I think, especially the more I've watched it, the more I find myself caring for the characters, because the arcs people have. Like, I think the best example, because it's the clearest one, is Nux, who is the young, suicide bomber.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, you might not even be sure if he's going to be a big character in the movie. You think he could die 5 minutes in.
Yeah.
But then he winds up getting on the rig, and he gets thrown off, and he gets on again. And before you even know it, you care for this guy, because he's been through some shit, and he believes in stuff, and his beliefs have been overturned, and now he's looking for something to fight for, and he finds it. And why does that resonate? Because every other character in the movie is going through the same thing in a different way. Max has lost everything. He doesn't believe in shit, and then he is feral, he is animalistic, and then he finds someone who trusts him and who is worth trusting in, and he starts to fight for something. And Furiosa has, I think there's suggestions that she was probably complicit in the prostitution of these women.
Yes, and I mean, there's a reason why she's an imperator or whatever for Immortan Joe. Like, and so she probably did some real awful shit back in the day. And so
her redemption means something. And those women, this came out the same week as Game of Thrones did the episode of 1,000 Rapes. And and there was all this stuff online justified that Game of Thrones goes to rape too much. And one of the great...
It's a really weird sentence.
I'm sorry, but they do.
Yeah, no, it's fair enough. It's just as someone who doesn't watch the show, that's just like a, what?
Yeah. And the thing about Fury Road is this is absolutely a movie about, sexual prostitution and slavery and all this.
But it's not exploitative about it for 1 second.
They don't need to show you that. They trust that you hear about it and you believe these women and that they are human beings and they don't need to be exploited. And there's
and that's like showing some a rape scene or like an implied sexual assault scene or something like that would just drag the entire movie down. Like there are times it's not to say that you can't have a rape scene in a movie or anything else, but there's times and places for it. It's that kind of scene is so intense that it's you need to be making the movie that needs that scene. And the movie does not need that scene. Don't fucking do it.
No, and so there's just this immense amount of thematic convergence to this, and it's all in the narrative too. And, you can explain the whole plot of this movie in one sentence. They drive to the green place and they don't get there and they come back.
Yeah.
But, there's so much more to it. And I think the simpler a story you tell, oftentimes the more complex and rich a story you wind up telling.
And it's something that you were saying with, Nux, that, one of the things that makes all the characters very interesting is that, they don't need to have these very, explicit sort of cliche character arcs, because all of them fit into the overall thematic presentation of the movie, which to me is the whole movie is kind of a it's using the post-apocalyptic setting as a pastiche on society. That the society that Immortan Joe has created is something that's all he does is he exploits and sort of commodifies people to elevate himself and his regime and his own power. So he does that in a number of different ways. With women, he either uses them to produce milk or he uses them to produce children. With Nux, he uses him induces him with drugs and religion and all the other war boys to become basically his slaves, ideologically. So he uses them and their bodies to fight for him, and then they use Max's blood as a way to empower themselves. So it's all about the ways that human social forces, when going wrong, exploit each other for the sake of one individual to empower himself. And it's that's the whole presentation of the movie is all about that idea, and every single character fits into that idea. You can't cut anything out because it's so laser focused on precisely what it wants to do, and it knows precisely what it wants to do, and that's the movie.
Absolutely. And I didn't realize, I think, how deep a lot of that ran until I saw it a second time, and it is very much this thing about, toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And, you can totally read it through that feminist view. And the larger kind of, as you're saying, view of exploitation. And we're going to talk about Marxism, I know, when we get there. But just, I love that it's this feminist argument that realizes that toxic masculinity, those things, hurt men and women equally in some ways. And that Max and Nux are both destroyed, and having this kind of matriarchal thing that is created with Furiosa and this alternate way where it's nurturing, it's not exploitative, it turns them from animals into humans.
Sure, yeah.
And it's a powerful thing. You see, and how much there is to just like Tom Hardy's performance of how feral he is for the first hour of this movie, and how long it is before he starts trusting Furiosa. But once he does, he goes through a real transformation where his voice changes and his posture changes and all of this. And it's very powerful. I think it's very humanistic deep down.
Yeah. It's something about the movie that's like, it's an interesting discussion, because I feel like the movie is definitely like the woman side, like the feminist side is definitely like the most forefront aspect of it thematically. And it's like, I think appropriately so, like in the modern, like the current climate, you need a movie like this to come out. But I do like that the movie is a lot more sophisticated than just that. Like, it's not just talking about the ways that women are exploited by society, or even just like one of the ways that they are. Like, it is talking about the ways that like social forces exploit people in general, and the various ways they do it. That's why when we were talking before we did this podcast, I said that I think you see it as a Marxist movie because of the things like where he uses he manufactures a scarcity of resources to control the people. So it's like he controls the water. He also controls these drugs that people are dependent on. So it's like he uses that to control the people underneath him. And then he also takes people and like forcibly imprisons them and uses their blood, which also weakens them. So it's like they can't escape because you're just draining their blood to like empower your own like social forces, you know. And then like with the women, it's all like the birth stuff. But I will like also that the movie doesn't, I feel like, just straight up go like men are evil, which is a very easy like rabbit hole to go down if you get too extreme with like a sort of like feminist theoretical point of view, because it is something where it's like, I think like the movie would have taken a real bad turn to me thematically if they had gone to the green place and it was kind of like what Beyond Thunderdome, the third Mad Max movie, kind of did, not with the feminist undertones, but like they actually do reach a sort of paradise where like everything is green, and like I was worried that it's like, oh, they're going to just like run into like a matriarchal society that's like, well, because women run the world, all the problems are solved. That's not the case. Like, it's not that simple. Like, it's not just men are the problem or women are the problem. It's not like they have that question like who killed the world. The answer to that isn't men, or it's not toxic masculinity. It's the answer to that question is that people did. Like, everybody did. Everybody contributes to the society that they are a part of, no matter how small. Even if you are someone who's exploited and controlled, because almost everyone is, like, regardless of race, gender, class, in some way, everyone is exploited and manipulated by the society they live in. That's what society is and does. What the movie represents is it's like, but you do have a power as part of the society, as part of someone who makes it possible. You have the power, if you join with other people, to influence that and to change that. And it's not as simple as like just put a woman in charge or put like a nicer guy in charge. It's like we have to like sit down together as different diverse people and talk and like discuss our point of views and come up with a like more practical solution. Because like the end of the movie is also kind of ambiguous just in terms of like, yes, they kill Immortan Joe. They get back to the place. They're accepted. They let the water go free. But it's like, but the world's still fucked. Like, even if like they do unrestrict the access to water, like where are they going to get more water? Like, where is that water coming from?
Well, and the
problems aren't solved, but like someone is at least trying to solve the problems.
Well, that's what I like. It's the first step, and you've seen what these seeds for that are. I mean, That's a big theme when you have the second half and they have seeds and growth and all this stuff. But the seeds are in that relationship between Max and Furiosa.
Yeah.
And that's why there's such emotional resonance when he finally says, Max, my name is Max.
Yeah.
Because it's this trust and bond that has developed between these two people, and that is the key to what goes on. And again, as you say, it's not just about masculinity or femininity. It's about this shared space between people where neither of them ultimately is exploiting the other. They ultimately trust and rely on each other in a very profound way.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the normal Hollywood movie, they'd fall in love. But that's not what this is about. It's about something, I think, even deeper and more lasting than that on some level. And, you know, my brother, when we saw it, he was like, well, why does Max have to leave at the end? They're friends. And it's like, well, but that's kind of the point, I think. Max has to go on.
That's also the way that all these movies end.
Well, of course.
Kind of has to happen.
It's an archetype thing, but it's also, I think, this wasn't about this relationship that they're going to have forever, but that they could come together when they needed each other.
Yeah.
And then he can go off because that's who he is. There you go. That's what the movie's about.
I mean, it's point. Like, in terms of like a primary like male-female relationship, it has a lot more in common with like a Miyazaki movie than it does like any other action movies. You know?
Absolutely. And yeah, it's a very smart movie on all those different levels. Yeah, and also, it's thrilling as fucking hell.
Yeah. Because it's something where it's like the criticism about it that made me the most angry was all the people saying I had no plot. It's like we were able to have this whole discussion,
right?
Which is something that was like, you know, we can't have this kind of discussion about Avengers 2, which isn't like say it's like that's Avengers 2 is awful because of that or something, but It just shows to show that, like, Mad Max is kind of on another level in so many ways.
It is.
Ways it uses storytelling.
Well, and here's the thing. So we had to go through our 7-minute recap of what happens in Avengers 2.
Exactly.
But it doesn't even approach the thematic density of something like Mad Max or the narrative density. Mm-hmm. So, you can spin all the yarn you want in the world about this stuff, but that doesn't mean you're saying anything of substance.
Yeah, exactly.
And this movie says very little, but it says a lot through that. Or, maybe it speaks very little, but it says a lot.
It talks softly and carries a giant explosion.
Absolutely. And again, it is thrilling as hell. I mean, those action scenes, it's also just like how clearly he choreographs action.
Yes.
And how you're never at doubt of where the geography is or who's on screen or any of those things. Yeah. It's not a Michael Bay movie. It's not even, even I think Joss Whedon in Avengers often gets shaky cam and I can't see what's going on.
Yeah.
This is so clear and it's physical, it's chemical. You're on cloud 9 watching this and it's an out of body kind of experience. Because of just how well done everything is.
And it's so cool because it's got, like, that kind of, like, Road Warrior thing of basically, like, every single action movie is, like, there's just a bunch of fucking cars driving and everyone's driving and it's super fast and it's, like, there's something about, like, most action movies don't have, like they have, like, a car chase scene or two. It's, like the fact that this dedicates, like, all the action are these, like, huge, elaborate car chase set pieces. It's, like, there's something really intoxicating about that. Like, it's kind of like you were saying with, like, the symphonic qualities. Like, the movie is moving, literally, constantly. And, like, every time there's action, it's just moving faster and faster and faster.
Yeah. And I think I get out of the theater and it's like I'm physically altered. I got back in my car every time after watching the movie and I'm driving and it's like I can feel like I'm in the movie still, which is dangerous when you're on an actual road.
You need to get a giant pole to stick out the top of your car.
Yeah.
Thomas can hop up there and, like, hijack another car.
But it's all integrated because, you get to, like, the end of that last action scene in the movie where Nux has to flip the car to break down the canyon. And he points at the woman he's bonded with and says, lady. And just mouths, "Witness me." And my heart breaks every time because that is such a beautiful payoff to who that character has been. Yeah.
And then it's also, like, that really, for me, like, really heartbreaking scene when he's first abandoned by Immortan Joe, basically, because it's like, and just look at this, like, this whole fucking... Here's this poor little kid who, like, he's, like, 14 years old or whatever, probably in the context of the movie. Like, he's young. It's like he is bald. He has been indoctrinated. He has been, like, that sort of the Marxist connection. One of the Marxist connections is, like, religion is the opiate of the masses. This movie definitely uses it that way in terms of, like, the Valhalla, like the idolizing war and warrior culture, like, the addiction to drugs, the addiction to the blood that he's on, and the fact that it's like he has a fucking tumor, like, it's like he's irradiated. And it's like he has lived his entire life as a part of the society, told to do all these things, to idolize Immortan Joe as a god, and that, like, if he dies in battle, he will be, like, glorified in Valhalla. And it's like he's just some sad kid who has no idea what the fuck he's doing, and Immortan Joe just disposes him as nothing. It's just like, because that's what, like, society has always done to young men in, like, times of war. It's just like, we're just going to throw you out there and get you all killed, because in an evolutionary sense, you're effectively disposable.
Yes. Yeah, man. The other thing to say, though, this has been a fairly serious discussion. This movie's also funny, and it's fun. And it's got just goofy shit that is just fun to watch. I mean, Immortan Joe, he's got a lot of thematic significance, as you're saying, that's very serious. He's also a funny villain, because he's so ludicrous, and he, like, the scene where he, disavows Nux, he goes, "Mediocre!" And it's just really kind of a funny little moment. And I think there's a lot of that in the movie, where it also has this kind of lightness to it, and this quickness in its step, in how it approaches things, and it just lets the ridiculous be ridiculous sometimes.
Yeah, I've always loved, like, Mad Max kind of, like, pioneered the, like, a crazy post-apocalyptic world, and, like, it still has, I think, probably the best version of it. Just, like, there's something so effortless about, like, just having this fucking car stacked to the top with electric amplifiers and a fucking crazy motherfucker with an electric double-necked guitar that shoots fire while he's playing it as, like, this war thing of, like, there's also a guy up there with, like, drums. It's like, it's the replacement of some guy, like, with a bugle, like, signaling charge. It's like, this is totally what it would be. Like, this is what, if our culture in the 80s just went off the fucking rails and kept on going, like, at an exponential, like, up direction because of the apocalypse, like, this is what it would fucking be. It's just excess and madness.
Yes, absolutely. God, it's so good. It's one of those things, the more you talk about it, the better it gets.
Yeah.
And that the guitar guy can be ridiculous and silly, but also have that significance we're talking about.
That it like ties into something really primal in a really fascinating way.
Yeah. Well, we were talking earlier about Jurassic World, which is bad, and Avengers 2, which is good, but I think they all share something that even if Avengers 2 has Joss Whedon's voice to it, it's a corporate product. It's made by committee to some degree. That's even the best blockbusters we get now are often like that. This is the work of, as we say in film school, an auteur. This is one man's vision.
Mad Max Fury Road is a fucking art house film.
Yes. I mean, a lot of people work together to make it, but ultimately it is all George Miller's vision. And how satisfying is that to see in a mainstream movie theater? As it is an art house film, basically. Yeah. It's just, it played everywhere, and that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something where it's like probably most like action directors are not probably going to take the lessons they need to take from this movie, because that feels like kind of how it goes. But some will.
Yeah.
Like, this movie will change some things. Like, it is such a breath of fresh air amidst like the just like labyrinthine, plot-heavy action movies that we've gotten for so long. That's just like...
I wonder if we're past the point where a movie like this can make the splash I think it Once Upon a Time would have made.
Yeah, because it's like it's made money, but it hasn't, like, it's no Jurassic World.
No, and here's the thing, like, I do compare this to The Matrix because it feels like that kind of breakthrough, kind of big new thing. Yeah. But when The Matrix came out, it was a kind of slow burn and then became this big hit.
Yeah, it was a huge pop culture sensation.
And then influenced a lot of stuff, yeah. And I think The Matrix is every bit as, I think, thematically unified. It's a complex movie, but I think it's it's the amount of story it needs. In fact, if you look at that first Matrix, it's very simple in terms of what actually happens in it.
Exactly, yeah. It's very straightforward.
Very straightforward, and it is, I think, very much the work of, the minds of the Wachowskis working together. And
unfortunately, they couldn't keep that up for this, like, the sequels are in some ways the exact opposite of what made Matrix 1 good.
Yeah, it's when the purity goes away and you have to make something for a different reason. But that's the thing, is the Matrix 1 had that splash and was that kind of sensation. I wonder if the world is just too noisy now for something like this, because I think if you put out Mad Max Fury Road in 1999 somehow, when there just wasn't this much coming out and the general quality was much lower, I think this would be a much bigger sensation.
Yeah.
Right now I think it's more of a critical and cult sensation, and that's great. I love that it made money and that people are talking about it as much as they are, but... it's not Jurassic World. It's not the one that everyone on Earth went to see.
Yeah. It's, it's like maybe this is like, it's the right movie but the wrong time kind of thing. Where there is just like, the action blockbuster, especially like with all the Marvel stuff, has just gotten so huge in the last few years. It's like, fuck, man, like this movie's so good.
That being said, I'm still amazed this got made. Yeah. A major studio, how I described it in my review, is a room full of executives went collectively insane and gave George Miller as much money as he needed. Because there's no way this looks like a good investment on paper.
Sure,
There's absolutely no way you fund this and think, yes, we will make $1 billion off of this.
I mean, the one thing it really has going for it from a business point of view is the fact that it's part of the Mad Max franchise, which is at least known. Although, like, Beyond Thunderdome came out a long fucking time ago. And only one of those was a really big hit, Road Warrior. Mad Max 1 was a big hit in Australia, but not here. So that is something that's like, I do like that, like, most of the minor characters in these movies still have Australian accents. That's really nice. Like, it's just such a cool thing when you have a movie that's like, it doesn't necessarily just feel like an American-made movie, Yeah. It's kind of the same thing when I talked about Witcher 3 on the last podcast. It's like, you can just tell, it's like, someone from like a different point of view and a different culture like made this product. It's like you can tell that through like at the thing,
Yeah. Well, here's a question for you.
Okay.
I've not seen the other Mad Max movies.
Yes.
And obviously there's no reason you need to see this one.
No, not at all.
But you're a big fan of those ones.
Yes.
What is that? Is there some intertextuality there? What does it do for you?
Like kind of like I feel like all the Mad Max movies. I've never seen the first one, I should say. I've seen Road Warrior and I've seen Road Warrior twice, though not recently, and I've seen Beyond Thunderdome. I like both of them. I think people give Beyond Thunderdome a bad rap. Like, the back half of that movie isn't great, but the first half is fucking cool as shit. There are two guys called Master Blaster that are in the Thunderdome. The guy who's called Blaster is this big motherfucker in, like, this big suit, and he's, like, really dumb. And then Master is this little guy who sits on top and tells him what to do. Master Blaster's fucking rad. But yeah, like, I guess there's some of the stuff where it's like pre-apocalypse, like Max had his daughter or whatever, and that's kind of like alluded to. Like this movie definitely takes place within the Mad Max universe. Like there is like steps of continuity, but those movies are so like divorced from one another in terms of like direct sequels. It's not like, It's not like like Mad Max drives off at the end of Road Warrior and then drives right into Beyond Thunderdome. It's just like at some point he ends up in this like weird area and Beyond Thunderdome happens. It's kind of the same thing with this movie.
Yeah.
Like, I think, honestly, Fury Road is probably the best out of all of them. Like, even though I love Road Warrior, it's great, but, like, Fury Road taps into something, probably because it's new and different, it taps into something else for me.
Well, and I've been hearing a lot of people who were there when Road Warrior came out who are saying
yes.
that. So,
yeah.
I think part of it's just Fury Road, he spent, like, 16 years planning this thing, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's been just brewing for a very long time, and it came out so pure, and I think that is so rare.
Yeah.
That is just so rare these days because we're going into an era of filmmaking where really everything's being done by committee, and it's a much more old school television kind of thing where you have some central producers and then a lot of hired hands doing the actual work.
Yeah.
You know, that's going to be all the DC stuff. You're not going to see a DC movie that's a pure artistic statement.
Yeah.
And not that there's been a Marvel movie that's been a pure artistic statement. There hasn't. But those have been a little purer.
Yeah. Like Guardians of the Galaxy
yes.
certainly has its own thing going on and stuff.
Yeah, but I think we're headed in a very kind of committee or direction even with that. You know, Edgar Wright couldn't survive in this medium and it makes sense. Not film. He's still a filmmaker. But just
but like in that sort of like big blockbuster area.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's Fury Road is something to be thankful for right now. I think.
Yeah, and it's something where it's like there are talks of like pre-production on a sequel because it's like apparently he had it all planned out originally when this movie was supposed to come out like forever ago as being like kind of a 2-part thing. So hopefully like a sequel to this movie gets made and it's just as awesome. You know, like I'm stoked for more Mad Max. Like even if it isn't nearly as good as this one, like even if it doesn't have all that sort of like thematic like richness to it. Like, even just on its own as, like, a normal action movie, if you took all that stuff out, just, like, the setting and the world of Mad Max, I just want more stuff in that setting. Cause
absolutely.
It's so cool.
You know, I don't need more Mad Max after this, but I will take it. Sure, if
yes,
because
I would very happily take it.
I trust George Miller. He's got no intrinsic reason to be doing these other than artistic merit, you know?
Yeah.
He's made. He's had his career and all that, and he's old. And, you know, if he has things he wants to say, someone should let him say them, because... he deserves to.
Yeah. And it would be nice for Tom Hardy to get, like, at least 20 lines and playing as Max, you know?
But I think it works in this one.
It works so well. Like, I'm just making, it's just a funny kind of point.
Right.
But it is really, I mean, he has as many lines as he needs to have. Like,
right.
It's not like Max was never, like, a chatterbox in any of the movies.
No. It's just this, I mean, this movie doesn't waste a line of dialogue. It doesn't waste a second of screen time.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like there's anything missing or that should be missing. It just...
Yeah, because it's like, and maybe this is kind of a more personal thing, but for me, like, the one thing that kills movies more than anything else, for me personally, is just bloat. Like, anything that's, like, not needed, I can't fucking stand it. It's the main reason why I think Terminator 1 is, like, a, like... masterpiece of a movie, and Terminator 2 is just like a really good movie. It's like Terminator 2 is really good, but like Terminator 1 is fucking lean, motherfucker. It's the same thing with like Alien and Aliens. I like Aliens to death. The Alien 1 is just like fucking like that's what that movie needs to be, and that's just what it is. It's been so long since I saw. I don't even know if I've ever seen a movie in the theaters that had that quality to it. It's like this is that fucking movie.
Absolutely, yeah, a lot better than Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen.
Yes.
I don't know. That's just the one you always go to.
If there are two movies that are the exact opposite but are still action movies, it is fucking Fury Road and Revenge of the Fallen. Like, one movie is like everything it needs to be. The other is nothing that it needs to be and everything that it shouldn't.
All bloat, no bloat.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, and there's still some things I'm excited for this summer. I'm not sure when this episode is coming out. I think this movie will already be out when I release this episode, so we'll talk about it next time. But Pixar's new movie, Inside Out, by all accounts, people are using the M word for that one too, masterpiece. Oh. And
I thought the M word was motherfucker.
No. I am very excited. Pixar has not, the last, I think, real... artistically successful Pixar movie on a big scale was Toy Story 3, which is 5 years ago now. And I'm very excited for this. This is, Pete Docter, who did Monsters, Inc. and Up, and he's very smart, and I look forward to this, and just, it sounds like it's really great. And if we could get 2 movies of that quality, Fury Road and Inside Out, in one summer, that is a hell of a summer for movies.
Yeah.
Because I like when we get a landmark and it feels like a landmark.
Yeah.
So... definitely. Looking forward to that. And in future episodes, we'll also definitely, I think next time we come back, we'll at least have first reactions on Arkham Knight. Batman.
Should. Yeah.
I'm excited for that. Are you going to get that with the season pass or not?
No. I've digitally pre-ordered it and did not. Because it's like, if the DLC gets good reviews and it seems interesting, I'll get it. But it's not something I need right away.
Okay. The only thing that they haven't said enough about it yet.
Yeah, exactly.
So, who knows? But
I think there's some Batgirl DLC something that's like, maybe I'll get that because I think Batgirl is super cool. But
that being said, the DLC for these games has not been good so far, I don't think.
No. That like one Harley Quinn one for Arkham City was really disappointing.
Yeah. But man, am I excited for this game.
Yeah, it seems really good. It's something where it's like, I'm really excited for this one, but I hope this is the last one they make. Like, it needs to be... And like Rocksteady has like said as much, but it's like, as much as I love these Batman games, like stuff like that Batman combat and stuff has been taken by so much stuff. It doesn't have the richness it once did because it's so suffused into the rest of the gaming landscape that I feel like this series needs to retire on a high note. I
agree, and I like the idea of them getting to wrap up their story however they want to, because this has been one of the best incarnations of Batman.
And like just based on some of the previous stuff they've released, it seems like this game is doing everything I needed this franchise to do before it quit. It's like I wanted it to have the Batmobile, and I wanted it to like incorporate some of the other Bat Family characters like directly into the game, and that's what they're doing. So
yay! All right, well, we will be back next time, and man, looking forward to Arkham Knight.
Yes.